Commissioner Weaver.
It's about time.
Please join me in a moment of silence today to honor our veterans and military personnel. And join me for the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start today with Positively Carol. If anybody has anything they want to bring up, it doesn't include those.
I'd like to have a little stab at this. The declaration we have is Governor Hogan signing a proclamation designating November as Hire a Veteran Month in Maryland. Our Board of Commissioners here on Friday, November the 2nd, proclaimed November as Hire a Veteran Month. The Commissioners made the announcement during a meeting with Secretary Brinkley, who serves as Governor Larry Hogan's Secretary of the Department of Budget and Management. And Carroll County has declared the month of November as the Hire a Veteran Month. Now, we have a lot of programs in Carroll County, but the Veterans Advisory Council is one that is, I think, unprecedented. I've worked with them for the last 3 years, and we have a lot that we offer veterans. And with their push to get the Veterans Independent Project started, a veteran in Carroll County will have every service, help with employment, help with almost anything. We even have a service officer over at the Burke to help veterans get employment in Carroll County, give them any assistance and help they need. We will not have any, when we get this all put together, there will not be a homeless veteran in Carroll County. There will not be a veteran that doesn't need help that won't get it. And the project is just unbelievable that Carroll County has taken a lead, I believe, even in the nation on dealing with veterans. So I'm really happy to see we've declared that as Veteran Employment Month. Secondly, yesterday I was invited to, Commissioner Wance was with me at Post 31 American Legion, where retired Staff Sergeant Landon Becker was recognized as Veteran of the Year. He was unbelievable. Talked with him, and that young man, younger man, I guess, he's 22 years in the military. You know, he had the Purple Heart, Meritorious Service Medal, and 7 oak leaf clusters. He was an airborne, in an airborne unit and part of the 1st Cavalry Division. What a impressive career he's had, and he's dedicated his retirement to helping veterans get the services they need. And want to mention him, as well as Veteran Friendly Employer of the Year is Coons Westminster Toyota, and Carroll County Police Officer of the Year, Corporal Michael Fitzgerald, for what they've done. So it was really impressive that they took the time in front of the packed house to honor those veterans of what they've done. So impressive time.
Excellent event. The guest, what was the name of the guest speaker again, Dick? You
Michael Yagi.
That guy was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And, you know, he said, I know when I should stop talking, my time's up, but I think everybody in the room could have listened to him longer, right?
Marine Corps officer.
He was telling stories about, you know, taking hills, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it was really a great speaker. So
yeah, it was all fact. I mean, it was his background in Vietnam and where he served, and you talk to people. You know, there's all kind of stories out there. Many of them don't talk about it openly, but there's all kind of veteran stories. And I will give the fact my father, who passed away about 4 years ago now, was 96 at the time, and Iwo Jima in World War II. He never talked to me about any of the things happening there. His last year of life, he opened up to my youngest son and started talking to him about all the things that happened, and that was totally, I'm hearing it through him. I wish he had recorded it through CMC. He wouldn't do it at that time, wouldn't go out, and they even offered to come to the house, and he wasn't going to talk about it. But since his passing, I found letters I have a whole chest full of things that I didn't even know existed that were on the attic that he had written my aunt from Iwo Jima during World War II and somewhere in the Philippines. And you sit down and read them, it takes hours, but they were put on microfilm, or microfiche at that time, I guess, sent to the United States. They took a picture, or blown up again, and sent in a little package back to the people here, and mailed to them in the United States. And that was because the volume of mail was so large, it would take they could condense it down to just a part of a ship to send the mail home, rather than fill the whole ship up with letters. And if something happened to that boat, it could have some sensitive information. And so it was interesting, the substandard print you get in those letters, but you spend hours reading them and just what they were dealing with. And I know he ended one with something like, damn snipers, I gotta quit writing now, I'll see you later. And that was the end of his letter, but that was in a foxhole in Iwo Jima somewhere when he wrote it. So it's impressive. And you talk to stories. All these people have unbelievable stories of what they've been, where they've been, what they've seen, what they've been through. And a lot of them, sorry to say, they went through some rough times, and they're not going to openly talk about it. And
did you happen to talk to Mr. Hafley yesterday?
Yeah,
Korean
briefly,
War.
yeah, briefly.
There's not many of those left either.
And I think
what an impressive guy.
I think we still
and
have
chipper,
about
million
World War II veterans left.
Yeah.
I think something like that. But if you get a chance, talk to some of them and just see from their point of view what the history was, where they came from, what they went through, and some of them will talk about it.
Yeah. Just merely say thank you. I mean, this is the weekend to do it. Veterans Day is actually Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've got 2 places to be on Saturday at different services in my district, so we'll be saying thank you. A simple thank you goes a long way with a lot of these guys. It really does. So make sure you thank those that have served at some point this weekend. Take a minute out of your busy lives to do that. So that was a great event.
Yeah.
All right.
And
anything else?
Yeah, it's just one comment. No particular instance in mind, but I have given speeches over the last 8 years, and I've said that when our veterans fight and give life and limb for their country overseas, that also shifts a responsibility onto the elected officials domestically to uphold what those veterans were fighting for. And what they were fighting for was our Constitution and the freedoms in our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And the best way we can honor our veterans is when we take strong, aggressive, brave action to defend the Constitution of the United States, which is the only thing that stands between us and a raw mobocracy known as a democracy, where mob rules, which means any 5 people can take away any 4 people's rights. One other thing I want to say, as you know, we had a small tornado go through Mount Airy Friday night into Saturday, and one of the observations that I made as I drove around was how the level of self-sufficiency of Carroll County citizens. They were all out there, those that were hit hard, cleaning up their debris, cutting up logs, patching up their houses, and I think that's noble and honorable that we, our citizens, take responsibility to do these things themselves. I do want to repeat some information, though, from a press release that went out the other day. And one of the things people have asked most about is, how do I get rid of this debris? So I want you all to know that are watching this, that on those that have tree and vegetative debris, we will be sending county trucks out, and I'll list the neighborhoods in just a minute, on November 19th. You have to have these trees and debris at the curb no later than 8 a.m. Monday, November 19th. Do not put anything in bags. We don't want it in bags. It makes it harder for us to handle. The neighborhoods or communities that we're going to hit in the streets, there were some errors in the first press release, but I'm just going to try to summarize them real quickly. In the Nottingham area, we were sending trucks to Arrowwood Circle, Loxley Lane, Crossbow, Longbow, Cobblestone. And then we have Bottler Road, Runkles Road, West Watersville Road, the Pheasant Ridge Community, Bennett Branch Road, Dogwood Drive, Hickory Lane, the extreme eastern portion of East Ridgeville Boulevard and Conestoga Heights, and Gillis Falls Road. So if you live in one of those areas, we will have a truck there Monday, November 19th. Get your stuff by the curb. Also, if you do have bag debris and you want to take the stuff and get rid of it before then, our landfills will take vegetative debris. And you can go to the northern landfill, 7 a.m. to 4:30 Monday through Friday, or 7 to 3 on Saturday. Or you can go to the Hoods Mill landfill, which is open the first and third Saturday of each month, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Sorry, I just walked in. I want to make sure it's clear. The county isn't doing this all on the 21st, on the 19th. We have trucks out now picking up debris. So anybody who brings it to the curb, so to speak, has to be vegetative debris, as you said. Within 5 feet of a public road, county public road, we will pick up the debris.
And regardless of size.
Regardless of size, we have bigger stuff than pretty much everybody else does, we think so. But it has to go to a county, not a private drive, to the county road, and we are doing it currently as we speak. Have been doing it all week.
So what is the significance of the November 19th? Is
It's
that the last chance, or what?
That's the last chance. If
Okay,
it's
so-
not out by November 19th, then we won't be picking it up.
Okay, so
We're
get-
gonna make a couple last sweeps, the 19th, 20th, and 21st, and then it's over.
Okay, so that's the last chance. The last chance is to have it out at the curb by 8 a.m. Monday, November 19th at the curb.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
That's fine. Anything else?
No, just kudos to everybody involved in that too. Our emergency management people, and I know Chris Weinbrenner from our office, and everybody else. I'd miss somebody. Chris Swam sitting over there. How you doing, Chris? Anyway, everybody that was involved, thank you. I'm not going to name them all because, again, I'll miss somebody. But another example of Carroll County and all those coming together when they need to make sure the resources are there for all of our folks. So kudos to all of you for doing that.
It's impressive to see the county staff come back to an emergency and the way they handle it. They really do a great job.
Yep.
Our emergency management team does a fantastic job. They step up and do whatever's necessary to do every time. Hopefully they don't have to do it too often, but it does happen. A couple things I want to mention. I was at the Fall Harvest Days. I saw Commissioner Weaver out there. At the Farm Museum on Saturday, very well attended. A lot of family activities out there. If you haven't been out there before, it'd be a good thing to go to. They have a corn cannon, which I did try. I have to admit I missed the target all 3 times, but it was so enjoyable. It was so fun.
Kept shooting at
me.
me.
Weaver kept ducking. I don't get it.
Moving target.
And
You should have hit him. He's not that fast.
it's too far away. And we had 2 things from the Department of Recreation and Parks. On November 1st, the department recognized 15 award recipients who were nominated by their peers for their contributions during this past year. In addition, 5 new members were inducted to Recreation and Parks Volunteer Hall of Fame. There are Vince DePalmer, Debbie Hessen, Thomas Mike Rowland, Peggy Rowland, and Kenny Stocksdale. These 5 recipients were recognized for the considerable efforts and lasting contributions during the collective service of 170 years. And also, there was a Maryland STEM Festival. Approximately 200 people participated in Recreation Park's first Mini Maker Day at the Robert Moton Center on November 3rd as part of the Maryland STEM Festival. This effort was one of 31 events in Carroll and 600 events across the state to celebrate science, engineering, technology, and mathematics. So thanks to everyone that participated in those events. And our first, we have one other thing. I think we have a video that's going to be shown. I'm not going to say too much about it, but the video will be self-explanatory when it comes out.
Joined today by Lynn Wheeler, our fabulous, I don't want to keep using the word fabulous, but it is the truth, our fabulous director of libraries here in Carroll County. And Ms. Wheeler, I got to tell you, you are an amazing lady, and things that you have brought to our library system here are incredible.
I'm Lynn Wheeler, the director of the library, and it is my great pleasure and delight to welcome you all here and to thank you very much for your support of our next sculpture in Mary Lou Dewey Park. I think you're going to be delighted with our newest sculpture. Very fortunate to be standing in this beautiful facility with our fabulous staff. The Holniker family has been very generous to the library and many other institutions in the county for a number of years, and we are very fortunate to have this gift from Ken's estate. And representing the family today are Lisa and Scott Holniker. Lisa and Scott, thank you so much. Let's begin the countdown now. Are we ready? Toby, are you ready? All right, ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
See, we knew if we made you cry, it'd be harder for you to ask us for money.
We're supposed to tell her the evil thought.
That brings us to our first item. Request approval for the CCPL FY18 fund balance for expiration comments at 50 East Main. We have Lynn, Tony Eckert, and is Ted here? Oh, Ted is here. I didn't see you sit in the back. Sorry, Ted. You coming up?
In the corner.
Look too comfortable. Okay, we're fine. So just Lynn and Tony then.
No, he's up. Or
No, he's
down.
up.
He's up. Now he's
It's
down.
up to you, Ted. I'll leave it up to you. That was a very good video, except for the Wans part. It was really good.
Well, first of all, Commissioners, congratulations on a wonderful election result.
Thank you.
And it has been a great pleasure working with all of you. And I wish you all the best in the coming years. And truly, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for all you've done, not only for the library, but for all of Carroll County. It's really been a great pleasure. And Commissioner Weaver, if I may, I just want to follow up on a book you might enjoy if you haven't seen it. You know, Libby and Jerry Foose, longtime community members. Libby wrote a book because she found a trunk full of her father's letters written during World War II back to her mother after her mother had died. And she published a book. And it is a very heartfelt and amazing book about the account of a soldier in World War II. It's called A Faithful Soldier Writes Home. And I recommend it highly. It's very well done.
I'll put it on hold.
Yeah.
I thought
Well,
it was gonna
I'll
be-
get you a copy. We'll make sure you.
I thought it was going to be a book of directions to the Finksburg Library, but maybe not.
Sounds like there's a story in there.
Commissioners, we're here today for two things. First, I want to announce a wonderful gift that we have received to support Exploration Commons at 50 East, which is $75,000 from the Callert Foundation and an invitation to apply again in their next round. So we're very thankful for that. The other reason is to ask for a transfer from our fund balance. Now here's the backstory. When we were building Finksburg, in the middle of that process, the county decided to put in geothermal, which has been a magnificent thing, and turned that into the first green building in Carroll County. But it did delay the opening of the library from one fiscal year to the next. So Ted suggested that we create an MOU between the commissioners and the Board of Library Trustees that would allow us to carry fund balance from one fiscal year to the next. But it would require that we get approval to spend. So we have done that over the years. That was back in, I guess, '08 that we signed that. And so over the years, we have done that. But we've always estimated fairly closely what our fund balance was going to be, and we've been able to include that in the regular budget process. And we have used those fund balances for two primary things. One, buying additional collection for the library, and two, supporting capital projects that we have gotten through state grant, because as you know, that's a 50% match. And we are very pleased that we, in addition to the county, have been able to help to fund those projects, which have been a great benefit in maintaining libraries throughout the county. This year, we did put in $150,000 in our FY19 budget, which was approved. However, when we had our audit this year, the end of FY18, we had a very good year, and I want to really not only thank the county, but thank our fabulous finance department for managing our money very, very carefully. Tony Eckert is Director of Finance for the library. And we ended up with an additional $150,000 in unexpended funding. Now, this amounts to about 2.9% of our budget. And it was both generated from positive revenues and cut back on expenditures, so we did have that extra money. We would like now to ask to be able to recognize that additional $150,000 in our FY19 budget and to earmark that for the construction of Exploration Commons, which will help to meet the match and to reduce the amount we would need to borrow next year when we have to start paying construction. And of course, the county gave us a loan for that, but we will have to pay interest on that loan naturally, and this will help us to reduce that. We, of course, are still very, very robustly fundraising, and I think we're doing very well. But we do want to be able to take this, to add this $150,000 into our FY19 budget. This would not have an impact on the county budget. This is just recognizing that unexpended balance.
And what are your revenue sources other than fines for overdue books?
Passports. We have events where we make, you know, $1 or $2 here and there for events like author events. When we have people pay for books, you know, when they're coming, and we build in our own expenses there. I don't know, Tony, what else? Passports?
We have a number of small user fees, like faxing services, print fees when people print, when they're using our computers.
Copiers.
So what is your total self-generated revenues?
They would probably be, I'm going to say maybe close to 150,000.
That's without fines. That's,
yeah. There is so many small. What we had in
what's your total
FY.
revenue excluding what's budgeted? What is your total?
Yeah,
revenue?
I mean, the
300,000 a year?
county's 80%, the state's another 10%. Fines are about 4%, and then everything else makes up, and it's quite a number of items.
So it's what, 3 or 4,
Yeah.
500,000, $300,000 or $400,000 a year?
Yeah.
Like that? Okay. How are you situated for other? I'm going to call them capital expenses, but they might be just expenses for like technology. Do you have sufficient funds?
We do,
for the
and
next couple
you
of
have
years?
been very generous in helping us to have a lump sum and also in the CIP for capital replacement. But again, we try to be very, very careful users of the funding we have. So this year we were able, by the combination of generated revenues and cut back on expenditures, that we were able, not cut back, but just regular savings from turnover and other things, that we were able to save an additional $150,000. So the total savings amounted to about 2.9% of our budget.
Ted Zaleski, does this structurally change anything in terms of our contribution towards the build-out, or is this basically a wash for us?
It has no impact on our budget at all. And like Lynn said, the only implication for us is it would be less money that they might be looking to borrow from us.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ted. Thank you, Lynn. Thanks.
Any other questions? Guess we're looking for a motion now.
Well, I think Steve Johnson said it right. It's hard to say no to Sister Lynn. I move the Commissioners of Carroll County approve the use of $150,000 of Carroll County Public Library fund balance to support the local match for the state capital project grant for construction of Exploration Commons at 50 East Main Street.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, Lynn.
Very, very much.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you at the opening of Exploration Commons.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Next, we have an
Stay in
update.
touch.
Update of Carroll County Broadband Grant Program status. Mark Ripper.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Mark. How you doing?
Good. How y'all doing? I'm here today just to kind of put all of this in perspective. It was about a year ago in November of 2017 that a committee you had recommended be put together came before you and came up with several options on how we could improve broadband in Carroll County with the $1 million fund that had been approved by the board in the budget. And you gave us direction for spending on two items. One was an allocation to build in 4 business parks, and the other was a grant program. And what I'm here today to do is to give you an update. Normally I'd have Miss Denise Beaver with me, but she had another obligation that she had to attend to today. But I think I'll be able to answer any questions you have. Just to give you, again, a little bit of background of what's been done with the program. We have been very earnest in trying to promote this throughout the county. There have been several different things, over a dozen actually, that we have done in order to do this. We've had articles in the Carroll County Times. We mailed a promotion to over 20 partner organizations. We work with the towns, the town managers, and economic development departments, if they had them, letting them know that it was there. Business associations, I think there's about a dozen or so that we contacted. We worked through the Miller Small Business Development Center. We talked to the internet service providers in Carroll County. We worked through the Maryland Broadband Cooperative, the Maryland Commerce Tweet. Denise Beaver and I actually did a radio show, the Chamber Chat, with the Chamber of Commerce here in Carroll County. It's been on Carroll Technology Council's e-news, and we had a rack card that was distributed out to all kinds of locations for people to get this information. And if you had any other suggestions, of course, we'd be open to do that, but we've been working on this now for about 9 months. As a result of those efforts, we had received 14 inquiries from people, and I could provide you with a list of those if you needed that throughout the county. Denise Beaver and I went and met with each individual organization and talked to them. Quite a few of them were not aware they already had Comcast service, and we're not aware that Comcast now had 1 gigabyte service here in Carroll County. So we talked to them about those options, and some of those are pursuing that. Other corporations, a lot of these, the problem is that they're just too far off the backbone in order with the funding that we have to be able to do anything to get them the service. We have also worked with Comcast at looking at doing builds to some of these organizations and are trying to move forward with that. We did end up having 3 grants that we were able to award. All of the grants were awarded to Quantum Internet Service, of which Kevin Brown is the president of. One is going to be to provide service to the Life Point Church. The total amount we'll contribute to that is $6,390. IAG will be providing $24,500. Keep in mind we're providing 50% of the total cost of the build for these. And the last one is DSS Contracting Corporation, and our contribution will be $14,570. For the business park program, you approved 4 business parks: Warfield, Liberty Exchange, Twin Arch, and the Eldersburg Business Center. To date, Warfield has been completed. It cost us $27,786 to build that. The initial estimate was $105,000. The reason for the drastic difference you're going is, what, they were off that much? We were actually able, there was an underground tunnel system in the Warfield complex that allowed us not have to dig, but actually be able to place the conduit through the tunnel system, which saved a considerable amount of money in that process. The second one that's currently in process is Liberty Exchange. It's going to cost us about $69,159 to build. The ROM for that was $87,000. Again, a much shorter build than the Warfield complex is, but we found conduit on the property when we did our survey that we're not going to have to put conduit in ground for part of that. We'll have to go from the backbone in a little bit, but once we're actually on their property, there's conduit there that we can use, and we're moving forward with that. Twin Arch, we are currently working with 2 different organizations. We don't have anything finalized yet. One of the companies, G3, has 2 facilities that they would like to get connected together, and we've been working with them. And then the Twin Arch, the complexity there that we've been dealing with is that there are multiple owners down there. Unlike the other business parks where you've got one owner, one property manager, pretty easy to get in and get things going. With this one, there are multiple property owners and property managers, so it's taking us a little bit longer, but we're making progress there. We have not allocated any funds to that. Denise Beaver and I actually went down and hosted, I can't remember the name of the company. It's one of those where you go into the room and you try and find your way out. There's actually a company down there. Pardon me?
An escape room.
An escape room company. They actually hosted it. Sounds good. Yes, I'm here. So, but they hosted it for us.
Take him with you next time.
Of all the tenants that were down there, we only had 4 of the companies come, and 2 of them has expressed interest. And again, we're moving forward with that. The Eldersburg Business Center at this point, we're not doing anything, and it's not because we haven't tried, but we just have not been able to seem to generate the interest from them in order to move this forward. I still continue to follow up with them every now and then to see if they would like us to come out and start the analysis and do the process, and they haven't been responding to that. And keep in mind that all 4 of these business parks already had Comcast in place.
So let me ask you a question. By coincidence, I was approached by a citizen this weekend talking about this program. And I'm just going to use my own words to paraphrase what he said. Basically, what he said metaphorically is you're riding an old horse. Gigabit speeds are going to be achieved through 5G. They're already close to a gigabit. What, 600, 800 megabits per second already,
right,
approaching gigabit. And that really what the county will be looking at is using its funds to move forward with 5G technology, not trying to continue to bring wires to people, cables to people with big gigabit fiber, because it's going to be old technology very shortly. Comment? Response?
Well, we do have a wireless company here in Carroll County that has the ability to be able to apply for these grants. To date, they have not applied for anything. But that would be a route that could be gone if they wanted to come to us and work on a potential solution for a problem somewhere in the county. We'd be happy to work with them.
So the point that I got, my interpretation, which might be wrong, but my interpretation of it was that if you're going to make government money available to promote broadband, if I may use the term generically, you ought to be expanding the market to help people move towards having 5G repeaters and not necessarily just limiting
Sure.
it to fiber. Your thoughts on that?
Again, if the wireless provider here in Carroll County wanted to do that, they could apply for that through this program. There's nothing that restricts them.
Okay.
When we set this grant up, wireless technology is as valid as wired technology in being able to apply for the grants.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, I guess my question is the next step for the business parks. So we have other business parks that we're looking at now to ring with our high-speed fiber, or
We have had a conversation with Ms. Paige Sunderland in Economic Development. There are other business parks. I can't say who, but at this point there are 2 major business parks
Okay.
that we could possibly be looking at doing something in the future. When the time is right, we'll come before
right,
you.
because we do want to move forward and
Sure.
keep this up. We just don't want to stop with those 4, and actually it looks like 3 right now, since
Right.
the other one doesn't want to do it. And the 14 people that applied for the grants, and you said we helped, I guess 3 of them, other ones went to Comcast, but does everyone have, of those 14, they haven't, I guess, their next step that they know what to do? if we can help them, they're given resources to try to help them out a little bit.
Yes, we work with them very closely. Our goal when we went out and met with these people was not to get them into the grant program necessarily, but with the experience and the knowledge that we have to help them get the service that they need.
Okay.
There was actually a company that right here in Westminster that is just on the other side of the Ting build in the city of Westminster. They're just outside the city limits. We actually spoke with them about possibly going to Ting because we had been approached by the city about building outside of the network and seeing if they could get that. I mean, the build's literally like 50 feet to this company, and that, as plus work with them on their Comcast service. Again, none of these companies realized, and I've had a conversation with our contacts from Comcast to let them know, guys, you got to be doing a better job and letting people know what services you have available, because none of these people knew that gigabyte service was now available. Whether it came in their bill and they just didn't pay any attention to it, or whatever, they were not aware of it. So we were able to make them aware of that and help them look at those possibilities.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Mark, and you're going on to the next item.
Yes, Commissioner. The second item that I have is a request for some funding. Right now, with the state of Maryland, we pay no monthly fee for the internet service that we get. We have two 1 gigabyte redundant connections down into the city of Baltimore, and at this point in time, we are using both of those connections, and there are times where we hit what we call peak, meaning that we literally max out one of the 1 gigabyte connections on the internet as we move forward. Obviously, the technology of county government, the public libraries, community college, and public schools is continuing to grow, and the usage, video, and all of those things, so our needs have continued to grow. We had a conversation with the state of Maryland, who provides us that service, and just so that you understand, the reason that they provide us that service at no cost is because they do have fiber in Carroll County that we are letting them use to help them connect their facilities back to the state of Maryland. So it's an MOU that we've had set up for several years, an agreement that they have. The state of Maryland is willing to increase the speeds that we have with them, again, at no additional monthly cost to do this, but we do have to replace equipment. Right now, our equipment is only able to do the 1 gigabyte speed. And what the state of Maryland is proposing is that initially they will take us up to 4 gigabytes, two redundant 4 gigabyte connections, with the option for us to continue to grow all the way up to 10 gigabyte connections by simply making a request 30 days in front of when we would need to have those under our current contract. What would happen is if one of those redundant connections would go down, we would have a serious problem, because at that point, we're probably using about 1.5, 1.6 gigabytes over those two connections. It would all be down on one, and it would tremendously slow us down. And unfortunately, the time that probably would happen would be because of some kind of an emergency that's taken place that could take out lines and those types of things. The cost to do this, the equipment that we would need to purchase would cost us $45,000, and it would allow us then to all the way out to do that. In the past, in the capital fund, we used to have a certain amount of money put away every year in order to replace equipment when the time came. After the last purchase of equipment, the budget office thought it would be better to not put that money away each year, but to put it all at one time. So I have no current funding in order to be able to do the $45,000 like I would have in the past. What I would like to propose to you for your consideration is, in the Carroll Broadband program, right now we have unallocated $857,000 that's currently not going to be used, or, well, some of it will be used obviously because we have some things, but a lot of that's not going to be used, and obviously there are a lot of considerations that need to be taken in place. I have gotten the budget office's permission to ask you to allow a transfer to take place between that account and the fiber account for the partners of $45,000 so that we can do the upgrade. I'm not saying they're supporting this. What will happen is that the next time we're planning on upgrading our equipment isn't until 2023. The equipment that we buy today would not be replaced as part of that replacement. It would go out another couple of years before we would have to replace this.
So the equipment we're talking about is what, a gateway and a modem? What are we
Basically routers and switches.
Routers and switches.
Because we have to connect the state to 4 partners.
And how are you connected to the state? Through fiber?
Through fiber, yes, Commissioner.
And currently, the bandwidth is 1 gig max, 1 gig.
On the equipment that we have. It's not the fiber, that's
And
the.
how old is that equipment?
I have to think here. Probably 3 years, I'm guessing.
So it still
Was the
has
last
work.
time, do you know, Ted, the last time we replaced the equipment? No.
And what's the life expectancy?
Would be about 7 years.
I mean, would it be, I mean, could we accomplish the same thing, but just by adding one more 1 gig circuit and then waiting until 2023 to upgrade to the higher speed?
Unfortunately, Commissioner, we looked at that option. The equipment we have, we can't do that with. We don't have the slots in the equipment to be able to do it because of the number of.
You mean the racks? You don't have the space.
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
So you have to pull them out. You don't have the base space.
Right, and you can't. And it's not like if I could replace the card, pull out the 1 gigabyte card, and put in a 10 gigabyte card, I'd be happy to do that. But we can't do
Do we
that.
have any
with
way
you.
of redeploying the 1 gigabyte hardware when we pull it out?
Yes, we will be able to use it somewhere on the network. I don't have a particular plan for it at this time, but we will hold on to that equipment. It could also be used as a spare if something else were to go down at some point. So.
Any other questions? All right.
Yeah, So, tell us again, that 850 whatever thousand,
857,000. Yes, Commissioner.
that's slated, what's that slated for, that amount?
Well, at this point, the only other thing that I have that is definitely going to be a spend, well, we will be spending some money on the Twin Arch deployment of fiber in the future, and we had allocated 117,000 for that particular build. I'm sure at some point that Quantum and Freedom will probably be coming to us with some additional projects. And I wasn't asking for a decision there, but at some point we may come back and Quantum may come back with a project that's $200,000. Well, that doesn't fit into the current grant program. We could come back and use some of that. And then right now we've been focusing on the business aspect of this. There's also the residential aspect that could possibly be looked at in the future as well.
Oh, really?
How often are we running into latencies right now with the current bandwidth?
Right now it's only about 4% of the time.
And how severe are they when they occur?
They're not that severe at this point. The big issue again for us would be if we lose one of the connections. That's when we're going to have huge latency problems because of the amount of bandwidth that's going across. And that's why we're only taking it to 4 gig at this point in time. 4 gig is more than sufficient for us right now to be able to handle if the one line went down. We would still be able to continue to operate, and the state is willing, as part of our MOU, to take us all the way up to 10, and we would not be back asking for any more funding because the equipment is going to be able to handle 10 gig right off the top.
Do we maintain plug replaceable spares for those lines, for those routers, excuse me?
No, they're on a, because of the cost of $45,000, I don't have spares for those types of things sitting around.
Okay.
I could drop back in one of the 1 gigs if I needed to in an emergency situation, but because of the speed, I shouldn't need to do that. So we don't have spares for that equipment, and Skyline has actually recommended to us to consider that, but you could spend $45,000 for a device as a spare and never use it.
Right.
You know, and you could have spent that $45,000 for something else. Just to let you know, I have been exploring with Skyline and with the Mako affiliate, what if a bunch of counties got together and we all have similar equipment in some cases? What if we could get a bunch of counties to contribute $5,000 each towards a spare? And if it was needed, then it could be used, and then that county would replace the.
That's exactly how the private sector does it when they have multiple locations. They just keep one in their logistics inventory and they have a carrier move it over.
So, but we are exploring that possibility.
Could you do one line for $22,000?
No, there's one piece of equipment that will go at the state of Maryland, and then there are devices that will go to each of the secondary distribution sites in Carroll County.
Back to my line of questioning, Mark, and, you know, I made light of the residential thing, but you know how I feel about that.
Sure.
Because my district has the largest void when it comes to residential internet service. So I always make sure that I put that out there. The Charles Carroll Community Center that we continue to work on, one of the things that we've talked about up there is the fact that we don't have a whole lot of internet service. So we're trying to put into that design concept some sort of a technology lab or whatever where folks could have access
Sure.
to the internet. Is that something that some of that $800,000 could be used towards
It
to
could, but
provide
I don't
some-
know that you're going to need to use that much of it.
Okay.
When the school was taken down, they had an antenna on top of their building
Right.
that provided them a wireless connection.
Right, which
We've
was pretty
kept that
strong.
wireless device so that it could be put on top of
Okay.
the new center.
Okay, so in your mind, we'll be able to just re-up that and
Right.
use it as they did.
Sure.
Okay.
So, and you'll have a lot less computers than the school system did, so I think it'll
Right.
have plenty of bandwidth.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Guess we need a motion then.
Actually, me too.
Two.
But who's counting? All right, well, I'll move that we approve the expenditure of $45,000 to upgrade the CCPN connection from 1 gigabyte to 10 gigabytes.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. And then I'll follow that up, obviously we have to, with the budget transfer. I move we approve that to the fiber, from the expansion account to the fiber network operating budget.
$45,000.
Right, thank you.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Mark.
Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a bid approval, generator and ATS for Freedom Water Treatment Plant. We have Andy Watcher and Mike Myers.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I was going to congratulate everybody on the election results, but I guess I ought to see how these next two items go before I do that. First bid approval today, the Bureau of Utilities requires the removal, the purchase, delivery, and installation of a new generator and automatic transfer switch to the Freedom Water Treatment Plant. So the county solicited bids, received 3, and the lowest bidder was Swam Electric in the amount of $48,564.
How many hours are on the existing generator set?
The existing generator has approximately 1,480 hours.
So it's still fairly new. How
But it
many-
dates
how many-
back to 1974 and 81.
1974.
And
So it's
Clark's are
30,
jury rigged.
40 years old, okay.
I think
That answers my question.
our
Yeah.
useful life out of
Because I
it.
know it's very rarely used, only mostly in weather and some power failures, but yeah, after 40 years, you're gonna have a hard time getting parts.
Yes.
Sold. Wow.
Thanks.
So maybe you can make a motion. Unless you
I'll
have-
move
you
that the
guys
Board
have
of
any questions?
Commissioners award the contract for purchase and installation of a standby generator and automatic transfer switch to Swam Electric in the amount of $48,564.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
So, is that a, what kind of generator is it? And the only reason I ask is because we just bought 3 last week for somewhere else.
Generac.
Yeah.
The generator that's in place right now is a 550 kilowatt generator. It was originally installed to power the old plant
Right.
itself. We are now downsizing that to a 50 or 75 kilowatt generator. It's basically in place to provide power supply to the lighting system for the premises itself.
Okay.
And the sludge settler setup, as well as the chemical storage facility.
Okay.
So it's not going to be used to run the new plant whatsoever.
Well, wait a
Okay.
minute,
So-
suppose there's a power failure.
Right.
Can we operate, is the old generator, I understood, would operate the entire plant?
Yes.
Well,
The
then
new
would-
facility has a standalone generator for it that powers the actual.
Oh, it
treatment
already has
process.
one generator?
Yes.
But it's insufficient kilowatts to?
The way that the old plant and new plant were wired or built, there's no crossing of some of the lines. So the old facility was set in place to be powered by the existing generator.
And that
I'm not sure why that process
And you're
was not.
decommissioning that generator? And there isn't, so up until this generator, how are you powering the new water treatment plant if there's a power failure? How are you powering it?
The new water treatment plant has its own very large.
And that, how old is that generator?
That's approximately 10 years old.
Okay, so you need the supplemental generator for,
Because
What do we need it for?
wiring system does not overlap. There's 2 separate wiring configurations.
You mean
one
for the old plant?
building,
So
one
this-
for the new building.
so this is just to bring lighting up in the old plant, incidentals for the old plant?
some very important parts of the old plant.
I thought we were pretty much on the track. When I took office 8 years ago, the old plant, excuse me, when I took office 8 years ago, the new plant had never met its production capacity rating of 4 million gallons per day.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked with General Electric. General Electric was very good, and ultimately they fixed the problem, and I understand we are able to generate 4 million gallons per day with the new plant.
That's
Whereas
correct.
before it was only half that, less than 2.
Mm-hmm.
So do we even need the old plant anymore? Should we be spending any money at all to keep the old plant up and running in any way, shape, or form, given that the new plant is now performing at 4 million gallons per day?
The old plant is essentially mothballed. However, there is need for storage facility for our chemicals that are used in the new plant. We need the space essentially.
I see.
And we need it environmentally.
I got it. So you're still using, okay, I get it.
So is there ever a time that that's going to be de-seeded completely or not? Or is it always going to be?
We're going to need space to store the chemicals that are used in the new nutrient plant essentially. So I believe some parts of the buildings will always be needed in some way,
Okay.
shape, or form unless we expand the new facility, which is silly.
So there were 2 weaknesses I discerned when I toured that plant 4 years ago, 5 years ago. One, at the time, the new plant didn't have hot spares available, or rather spares available on site for critical control systems. And I think we corrected that by ordering a spares component, I think.
Yes.
I believe so.
And number 2, the other issue with the new plant was we had very limited on-site fuel storage capacity to run that generator in the event that, let's say, a major snowstorm took out the grid for, let's say, an entire week. That's happened in this county. And I seem to remember somebody telling me that we only had enough fuel to run that plant for about a day or so before we have to have a new supply of fuel. Is that the case? Or is my information wrong?
We've always used the old generator had fuel storage to it, so that's what we've used for additional fuel storage. The plant is running much more efficiently now, so we have I'm going to say about 2.5 days of fuel on hand now, the way the plant has been designed, and that is how we are moving forward at this point. We have contracts in place and agreements with roads if needed to get fuel there to the facility.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? We already have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're going to move on to bid approval for generator and ATS for small crossings pump station.
Yep, this is a
Gentlemen.
similar request for a different location. This is for the Small Crossings Pump Station. County needed the removal of the old generator, the purchase, delivery, and installation of a new one with the automatic transfer switch. Again, we went out to bid, got the same 3 bidders, but this time we had a different low bidder. This was Fidelity Power Systems in the amount of $27,750.
Hours and age?
All right, the age is 23 years old, which is getting kind of dicey. The hours are 898.
Wow, it's
And the
relatively new.
And the problem that we're having is because of the age, the parts are obsolete. And the critical nature of the pumping station is if the power fails and the generator doesn't work, there's about a 1 to 2 hour window until raw sewage starts seeping out.
And we don't have a spares complement on site?
We have a spare generator, but it'll still take time to get there. It's not the best means of doing business.
How many kilowatts?
It'll be 30.
Yeah, this one's
kilowatts.
30. The first one was 75, this one's 30.
You gonna put that up for sale?
We can check into that. It's aged. I mean, it's jury rigged in some facets.
But it will be put on the site for either somebody to purchase for scrap or for whatever remaining parts may be available.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So it's interesting to me that we're getting 2 different companies to provide 2 generators. One would think that we would be able to get one company to provide the same generator and we get a little bit better price.
They
Right,
had the
Mike?
opportunity, yeah, they had the opportunity, but
It
just
just
priced them
didn't.
differently.
So why did we bid separate? Why couldn't we bid them both? Would that have saved some dollars here? Not.
They both went out at the same time, and they had the opportunity to bid them as a package.
Okay.
For whatever
so you
reason,
gave them that
they,
opportunity.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Same generator, I guess.
Mhm. Different size. Yeah,
Well, right, different
sizes.
size.
Same
Right.
manufacturer,
Right.
different size.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get it with these generators. You know, you got to have them. It's like an insurance policy. You know, got to have it. It's just
Hope you never use it.
hope you never
Yeah.
use it.
For
Although
the
they're
pumping station.
although
I
they're
mean-
exercised. How often do we exercise our generators at these plants?
Several times a month at the pumping stations.
Okay.
I'm sure it's the same way at the treatment facilities.
Okay, but we have those on a regular exercise
We do.
to assure that they're going to come on when they're supposed to come on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, the question that comes up is, generally, you can get parts for the diesel engines when they're 20 years old. I mean, you know, getting a 1990s vintage tractor repaired is no problem, right, Dick? Whether it's Deere, Kubota, or something else, they're easy to get parts for. But the electronic components become more difficult because they come out of production, which raises an interesting question. When we buy these generators, which in theory should last 30 to 40 years, like the first one, should we be bringing in a minimum spares complement consisting of the electronics for the generator itself, the voltage regulator, whatever other electrical components, and should we keep them on site? Because if we had the spare electronics for the generator component of it, not the engine side, we could probably make this thing last another 10 or 20 years, couldn't we? And that raises an interest, should we be stocking those spares while we can get them? Because I imagine they're hard to get or impossible to get at this point.
That's a very good question. My concern is the shelf life. I mean, will they last?
That's the only.
Will anything fail and break down during the course of time?
And in utilities, you have over 30, 35 generators.
Approximately.
So if we start stocking up parts for that again, it's going to get
Well, but
costly in storage of the equipment.
Yeah, that's true. Of course, it goes back to what Commissioner Wance said, you know, I thought he was going to lead into the question, should we be standardizing on vendors and standardizing on sizes so that we could keep a minimum spares complement and use them? In other words, instead of buying a 35 kW, a 50 kW, a 60 kW, maybe we buy all 50s and then stock one set of spares. And then we don't have to dump a generator that's only got 800 hours on it just because it's getting old and we can't get the electronic components.
Some of the pumping stations have widely varying pumps and other equipment associated. So when they're built, they're sized for a sized
That's tough.
generator. So
That's tough to do. It's tough to. We did the same thing out at the firehouse when we got our new generator, and we suggested that maybe we, get spare parts and put them in a box on a shelf, and they kind of looked at us like, okay, no, because that's not the way that it works. In a perfect world, that would be great. Which leads to the question of, do we get any kind of maintenance or warranty with these things, with these generators or not? Is there like a 3, 4, 5 year something, blah, blah, blah with them or what?
this one here comes with a 5-year warranty on the generator itself and a 1-year warranty on the installation of the labor.
Can we get a maintenance warranty on the electronics?
I'll check into that.
Well, you
Commissioner.
can,
I'm not sure.
Commissioner, but the problem they're gonna have is once the unit gets to be 10, 15, 20 years old,
20 years old.
the vendor's ability to guarantee minimum response and uptime, then the vendors eventually say to you, the service vendor says, well, we can't get spares anymore, so we can no longer guarantee we'll have you up and running within 2 hours or 4 hours. So
Yeah,
it
it's
puts them
tough.
back in this kind of situation where you got a mission critical generator, you don't have the spares on site.
Mhm. That's correct.
But you know, the shelf life, a lot of these electrical components could very well be 20 years or more, as long as they're not stored in an area that has humidity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that this discussion shouldn't continue on at another time.
Yeah.
Maybe the next board,
And
but
an
we should
additional-
standardize on sizes, small,
Right.
medium, and large, and have one
Right.
set of spares stored someplace high and dry.
Absolutely. Food for thought for the future when we're doing these. And maybe it gets back to my question, Mike, to you, and you kind of answered it though, but you know, we're putting out to bid these generators and they seem to be all coming up here almost at the same time. It would be nice to be able to get, I don't know, 8, 9, or 10 of them and then have that ability to of course then in 30 years they're all going to go up again at the same time. So I don't know. It just
And one of the programs we worked on with especially utilities is now we have a replacement schedule that's only so, we only have so much money budgeted per year for replacement, so next year may only be one generator being replaced. The following year might be 2 or 3 small generators being
So you're
replaced.
kind of staggering it, right.
And it's minimum, again, we go with the base price. You start adding additional years of warranties, increases the cost. Now that's less than we're replacing.
Yeah,
But a
no,
package deal, I think, would still be cheaper. It'd have to come in.
Yeah, maybe.
Bundle them somehow.
Yeah, maybe try to look at that for future somehow, Mike. I know, listen, I know you guys do a good job of trying to do that down there. So that's not any negative to you guys, but it just seems like there ought to be a better way or a more efficient way in order to get these things.
And Mike, I know you go a lot off the state bid list and
Yeah.
whatever, but I'm still not sold on it 100%, so.
Yeah, no, these were bid too. These weren't
Yeah.
off any.
These are
Just to
local
put this in
bids.
perspective, 800 hours would be
Market.
like a car with 30,000 miles.
Yeah, well, I know. Yeah.
Well, generators are a little different than used, I mean, they're setting more, that setting time is probably harder on them than anything else, and then they're only started for a short period of time
Right.
to exercise them, make sure they work, and I'm sure that is more wear than tear than if they were being used all the time.
It kind of is,
I'm
although
sure it
they're
is.
designed to do that, though, Dick,
Well,
kind of,
the generator, the engine isn't it? It's a standard
Yeah, I know.
engine,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like anything else, and that's tough.
Yeah.
For the pumping stations, I think it's best to view the generator as an insurance policy. I mean, they do tend to last for a long period of time, but they're not used for very many hours, but they're crucial hours. So when the power fails, it's crucial to have a backup system in place that we know is going to work properly when
Right.
push comes to shove.
Some generators we have, or some pump stations we have an hour or two before if power goes out. Some other pump stations, if we have a warning light comes on that there's no power, we have less than 20 minutes to get there. So it does vary depending on the size and what the quantity is coming in, what time of day it is.
Do we have a motion yet?
No.
I'll move the Board of Commissioners award the contract for the purchase and installation of a standby generator and automatic transfer switch to Fidelity Power Systems, is that right? Yep, in the amount of $27,750.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Just one question, shouldn't this be out of the enterprise fund for all these?
These two are.
It is. They are.
All right. Item 6, bid approval, furnish and install fencing at Charles Carroll Park. Jeff Diggett's, Maureen Dunn. Easy for me to say.
Actually, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. I don't know why.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
We went out and solicited bids to furnish and install fencing at Charles Carroll Park. We received 5 bids. The low bidder was Carroll County Fence for $39,181, and we're here to ask your approval to award this contract to Carroll County Fence.
Glad to see a local company's rolling in here. That's good.
Yes.
Is that the upper field up there?
This is
Jeff?
both fields
Oh,
up
both,
there.
okay.
Yes, and it's replacing the backstop and the protective fencing along the dugout side, the bench side. And also on the upper field, it's adding an outfield fence as well.
Okay, good.
Currently, there's temporary snow fencing up there, which is sort of
Yeah.
half hanging.
Yeah.
This will be a very nice replacement, and it'll keep balls out of the construction area with the community center.
Temporary is the key phrase there.
Yes, that's
Key
very
word.
temporary.
Jeez.
I'll move the Board of Commissioners award the contract to Carroll County Fencing, CCC Fencing, to furnish and install fencing at Charles Carroll Park in the amount of $39,181.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have request authorization to execute annual renewal for Everbridge Emergency Notification System. Scott Campbell and Valerie Hawkins, and possibly other people. Never know who's coming up.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Commissioners, since 2015, the county has used an Everbridge product. The term is an emergency notification system, but it can actually be used for targeted routine notifications as well. It's a multifaceted system. But we have used this online product or web-based product for our notification applications. It's budgeted. It's $38,220 is the annual renewal. I'm here before you today to request the authority to execute that renewal, as I do not have delegated authority, sufficient delegated authority to do so.
So, you're going to yield the floor to me, Rothschild?
Sure.
So, just a quick explanation of what this does to those that are watching, our non-emergency notification system. Who it goes to, what it does, just.
This is also this is non-emergency, as it's used for also what technically is called, it's reverse 911, what most people think of as reverse 911. It's a mass notification system that we utilize in emergency situations as well as routine situations for different, for example, Public Works uses it a lot for routine notifications of employees and staffing things and like that. It can be utilized for both sides of the equation, and that's really a lot of its benefit is we can use it both ways.
Okay. You can actually pre-establish, Commissioner, say, for lack of a term, a target group, target audience, to say there's a group that you want to receive a notification. You can pre-establish that and use this for that purpose, or it can be something that in the event of an emergency, then you can establish whoever's going to receive notification at the moment.
So you have the ability with this to be able to target specific geographical areas in the event of something, whatever that is.
We can draw a circle radius around a specific address point. We can draw a polygon, whatever is needed for any particular incident, whatever the incident commander is requesting, for example, for an evacuation or anything like that. It has all of that capability.
And how quickly can you do this? In other words, if there's an incident commander on the scene somewhere that notifies you that we need to do something here and wherever, is that something you can get rolling in place right away, or does it take some time to do it, or?
It takes as long as it takes for the incident commander to call in and request it, somebody to log into the system, and there are multiple, there's a little bit of depth there with the number of people that are able to log in and do it. Log into the system, draw the circle, put the information in for the notification, and send it out.
Okay. And if I may, an important point, Commissioner, is we, on our side, we do not make the determination who's to be notified. For example, the fire chief would say, I need to get this message out to everyone within a 1 mile radius, or whatever. So using the information provided, then we facilitate that by entering the right information and launching the message.
The only reason I ask these questions is because if we're spending the money on an Everbridge system, I want to make sure we got the Cadillac. You know what I mean? Because
it's an excellent system, Commissioner.
Well, doesn't the public school system also have a parallel system which does the same thing? And if so, couldn't we consolidate the two?
They have a similar system from what my understanding is, without knowing exactly all of the pieces and parts that all of its capability. I wouldn't be able to really speak to that.
Pretty sure they have a similar reverse 911 where if there's an incident, they can do a reverse notification to all the parents at once through phone, email, and text. I mean, should we be looking at seeing if we can consolidate ours with theirs and just have one system or one subscription fee?
Well, I can say that from the county's perspective, going to this Everbridge actually has led to that consolidation or that shared use from the counties. I believe Director Cascaway can attest to the fact that a number of agencies are able to use this for their purposes as well as what we, from public safety, need to use it for. Your point is well made, Commissioner, and we'll be very happy to look into that opportunity.
We should.
Yeah, it might save a little bit of money on one side of the street or the other.
Yeah, and it's probably configurable based on the type of alert. They probably have different configurations of alert lists.
Right. But yet,
it could just be a matter of programming, user programming.
But yet, this is important enough that I don't want to challenge what we do in an emergency situation either. You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree, but there's another interesting thing. They may have access to more households than we do. If we wanted to also have household numbers, they got 13,000 people, I think, on their distribution list already. I think for their reverse 911. I think, but I'm not sure. But I think.
And just for clarity, Commissioner, we are not limited in any way as to whom we send this message to. When we do something geographically, anything within that receives the message. So it's not that we have to have a predetermined list for those type applications. What I was referring to for the target group is we may choose maybe a select group of employees or folks or customers of one of the services that needs to receive an important message. We can pre-designate that group to save time for that purpose.
So if you say we have a tornado, we need to have everybody in this zip code, does it have access to a database somewhere that has the phone numbers and email addresses of everybody that lives in that zip code?
It's called geocoding, Commissioner, and every building point that pops up in. Now, obviously, the weak link for this application would be the cell phone, and then we can use, what's the correct term, iPause?
Yes.
If that's applicable, which has a different application. That's where a wireless message goes out based on the towers or transmission sites that are relevant to the area that you're trying to get the message out. So it may take more than one system, but we get the message out both wireless and wired.
So you can send it to a specific tower or towers, and they'll hit anyone within the tower range will get that message.
Right, the iPause, and it's agnostic to the vendor. It goes off that site, so whoever operates it off that site, the message gets sent, whether it's just 1, 2, 3 vendors, they all send it.
Right. And there is some benefit too to the idea of multiple, utilizing every opportunity that we can to get information out to folks. So having some overlap on systems, while we certainly want to save as much money as we can, and we, as Director Campbell mentioned, we will investigate whether there's any way to save some money and coordinate. But there is some benefit to having some of that overlap with different systems because different people utilize systems differently. So we want to provide as much robust capability as we can.
Any other questions?
Any possibility of saving a little bit of coin if we don't do annual, or is this typically an annual thing that we do with these folks with Everbridge?
I think you have two excellent questions. Is there an opportunity to do more than 1 year, and is it typically annual? The answer is we don't know the answer to multiple year. We've never approached that way. Okay. We've only been doing this for a couple of years, and it's been done on an annual basis.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Something else would be more than happy if we can make the commitment.
It might be something worth checking into.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to limit our ability to get the latest if it's a 3-year thing either. You want to make sure you get the. Again, this is extremely important, so we got to make sure we've got the Cadillac and it works properly. So maybe this is the best way to do it annually. Just food for thought, maybe to check into it if we could save a little. So.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'll make the motion that that the Director of Public Safety, who is that again? Be authorized to sign the annual renewal of the Everbridge contract to include approving payment of the resultant bill. And that's just pay the bill. I move the Director pays the bill.
I like the first motion better because let's go with the first motion.
Okay, fine.
It's a Cadillac. I think he should help you.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second it.
Gee,
for the first motion.
You like the second one?
No, I don't think Scott would like that too much. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go on to request approval.
Let's please talk to the school system because maybe we can save them money.
Yes, sir.
Ask them. Just ask them. Let them know. Thanks.
A request approval to purchase portable chemical identification system. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you again, Commissioners. And I apologize. I should have introduced a member of our staff for the previous presentation. They were here to answer any questions you have. So I'm definitely going to do so at this point for this request. Byron Welker, one of our very active volunteers. And Byron, I apologize. I know you're an active member of the county's hazardous materials response team, which is a volunteer function. But are you also a team leader? Yes, sir. So Byron is here and he's able to answer any specific questions you may have about the device. Specifically, there are grant funds that are available to support the county's hazardous materials response team. That team, the HMRT, determines what their needs are. Our role is to help facilitate, as in procurement, et cetera, not to tell them or determine what product or services that they need and will acquire. So, based on the team's request for a $53,904 expense for the purchase of a Hazmat ID Elite Command package, and instead of me bumbling through it, if you have any questions about what this device can do or the need for the device, I would very happily yield to Mr. Welker.
Oh, he's here. We're going to make him come up. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Is this a budget request?
No, sir, this is 100% grant funded. There are no additional monies needed by the county or no county monies involved in this purchase.
And then maybe give my colleagues and anybody, the thousands of viewing audience people, an update on our hazmat operation as a whole, briefly. Again,
Sure.
just where it's located, Byron, and how many folks you got?
The unit's kept in New Windsor. We have approximately 20 hazmat techs, all volunteer. One of the few volunteer hazmat teams in the state. Pretty good turnout on situations still. So,
What's the average amount of calls we get on an annual basis? I mean, I know that's kind of tough, Byron, but just maybe a hip shot here. What's typical?
100 or less.
Okay. And they range from
The
fuel
majority,
spills
yeah,
to-
the majority of our calls are large fuel spills, tractor trailer, dump truck accidents, things like that. We do have a few unidentified chemicals and things like that, but the majority of it is hydrocarbons, be it gasoline, diesel fuel, something like that.
And just for everybody's information too, the state has a response team as well, and they roll in to back us up.
Yes.
Routinely or upon request?
Well, upon request.
Okay.
Always upon request, but routinely. We usually bring them out to help. They bring the checkbook a lot of times.
Yeah.
So we go and do the initial mitigation and stop the situation from escalating, and they come in and assist with the cleanup then and things like that.
Okay.
So isn't this mostly a chemical identification?
Yes, sir.
system?
It's updating technology. We're replacing an older unit that's 10 years or better, and just newer software. And the unit went from about the size of a toolbox down to about handheld. So
How do you use it?
we get a sample. It's placed on the unit, and then it identifies from a library that it has based on IR, if I remember correctly, consultant notes, but based on IR technology, then it looks and identifies what the sample is, liquid, solid, things like that.
And then that will determine what you do, how you
Yes, sir.
handle the response rate, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Determines whether they stay or run.
No, it's
Or,
interesting.
or whether we use the technology that you just approved earlier.
Right.
And that's where the Everbridge comes in, is if we have a chemical incident, we can consult and see what the evacuation range is or something like that, and then they can use the Everbridge to evacuate a 1 mile radius, 2 mile radius, depending on what it's determined by what the chemical is.
And it's interesting too, because these guys do a tremendous job of keeping up to date on who's where in the county as well. We've got, being one of the top counties in the state with the most light manufacturing, man, you never know what you're going to get with some of these light manufacturers. So it's important to know that they stay on top of that as well. So, and again, all volunteer. Our surrounding jurisdictions pay big bucks for people to be able to do that, and kudos to our gang for doing that as a volunteer.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll move the Director of Public Service be authorized to purchase the Hazmat Elite Command Package as you've proposed, and approve payment of the resultant bill, which is expected to be $53,904.
Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bud.
Now we move on to request approval to accept grant award for 2018-2019 Hazard Material Emergency Preparedness Public Safety And Mr. Campbell again.
Thank you. I was just back here begging Deb to come forward, but this is fine.
Come on up,
Ac-
Deb. Welcome to the hot seat.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
It doesn't bother her.
We always throw our softballs.
Would you like to?
Oh, sorry. Good morning, Commissioners. We're here this morning to ask you to accept the third year of a Hazardous Material Emergency Preparation Grant Award. This year's allocation is $14,300. The county provides the match through in-kind contributions, usually of space at the Public Safety Training Center, and the copying of materials for these trainings. So the total project this year is $17,875, and Director Campbell and company can answer any questions you might have specifically about the project, but we're just here to ask that you accept the award.
Just have to accept the grant that we've already applied for.
Yes.
I move the Board of Commissioners accept the 2018-2019 Hazardous Materials Emergency Preparedness Grant Award in the amount of $14,300.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Now we move on, a request to proceed to public hearing, financial assurance plan required by Senate Bill 863. We have Tom Delvis coming up and Gail Ingalls.
I got it right here. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Okay. Let me get this started, I hope. There it goes. All right. There you go. Okay. Good morning. I'm joined by Ms. Gail Ingalls, our Bureau Chief of Resource Management, and we're here to request the board's permission to proceed to public hearing related to 3 actions. The first one, as you indicated, Commissioner Frazier, is a requirement per the state law to develop and submit a financial assurance plan related to our MPDS permit efforts. You may or may not recall, in 2015, the state legislature did an amendment to the then required stormwater remediation fee, and what they actually did is they repealed the requirement for the fee, but in its place they required annual reporting to MD, and then every 2 years we were required to do what's called a financial assurance plan. The first year we did come to you and go through this very same process, and we did file that in July 1st of 2016, and then we're required to do it every 2 years thereafter, and that is to be done on our permit date, or actually when we're to submit our permit, which will be the end of this year. We must demonstrate that we have sufficient funding to meet the anticipated costs for the following 2-year period, and I want to interject right now that in the financial assurance plan that we'll be submitting to the state, should you all approve it, that we have the 2 years out are actually shaded, and there's a comment down there that these are estimated amounts and they're not committed amounts. And the main reason for that is that we don't have a draft permit from which we're working off of right now. The MD has not provided any of the jurisdictions with a recent draft permit, so we're making sure that in this plan these numbers are estimated and non-committed at this point in time, even though we're required to show them. We're making sure we highlight that. The local governing body must hold a public hearing and approve a financial assurance plan before submitting to MD. Again, we're here today hopefully to get your permission to move to that public hearing. And then after that happens and we submit it, the plan will be made publicly available on their website within 14 days. And MD has 90 days then to determine if we have sufficient funds and all as required by the law. After that, MD will submit an annual report to the governor and the General Assembly on all of the financial assurance plans that are submitted. And again, there will be 10 of them. 10 jurisdictions are required to do this process. And then that all has to go to the General Assembly by September 1st of next year. And they'll basically then use that to see if we are complying with our MPDS permits. Make it clear to both for you all and to the general public, this is not part of our permit. This is a separate law that the state of Maryland adopted regarding the verification of funding and funds being expended for these efforts. In our permit, we're required to do the exact same thing, which we do every year. This is a separate item that the state of Maryland chose to adopt itself. So, again, what's it related to, just in general? The permit requirements related to Chesapeake Bay TMDLs, the total maximum daily loads, those nutrient reductions that we're required to do. And in the state of Maryland, the surrogate for that in our MPDS permits, our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits, is the mitigation of impervious surfaces, those hard surfaces out there throughout the county. And in Carroll County, we are required to treat 20% of the what is called untreated impervious surface, which for us is about 1,614 acres. And throughout the law is called ISRP, which is Impervious Surface Restoration Program. That's basically what this is all about. We also are required to address what are called local total maximum daily loads, and that is with our own streams here within our county. So there are two different total maximum daily loads we're dealing with, those associated with the Chesapeake Bay and those associated with our local streams. And we have to show progress through our permitting program there. And then there are a lot of other programmatic control things that we have to do also, best management practices and implementation of control measures that we do through our operating processes here at the county. So as we move on here, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Ingalls to go into the details with you. I know you received copies of them. I want to put a disclaimer out there right away. These spreadsheets and the reporting requirements are not ours. They were generated and created by the state of Maryland. You're seeing kind of the snapshot or the end result of them, but there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes to get to those numbers. And I want to take right now the opportunity to thank our controller's office and specifically Ms. Doreen Hazlip, who provided a lot of support for us for this, and also to the budgeting office and Lynn Carr. They are the folks behind the scenes that help generate a lot of these numbers. So I don't want to take any responsibility, or will we take credit for any of the specific charts and spreadsheets that are used to generate all this. That is basically, we're given that and said fill them out. So the numbers are ours. The way we get the numbers or not is not our process. All right. So that's the disclaimer I would like to throw out right away. With that, I'm going to let Ms. Ingalls.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll let Gail go ahead and start the process with you of going through some of these sheets. All right?
Okay. So I get the fun part of trying to explain this information that we provided you today, and I'm sure you're looking at it thinking, what is this? Kind of like Doreen and Lynn and I do when we open it up and start the process of putting things together. So I'm going to start off with talking about sheet number 5. So at the very top right corner, you'll see the sheet numbers indicated. So if you'll go to sheet number 5, that would be wonderful. And as Tom indicated, our impervious acre treatment, 20%, is 1,614 acres. And this sheet basically talks about what work we have completed to date, where we're at in the process of getting to that number of 1,614 acres. So at the very bottom of the sheet, which is what's shown on the PowerPoint presentation, the total completed projects is 1,466 BMPs. Now that takes into consideration a lot of small BMPs that have been done and also the larger structures that we've worked on that you've been a part of approving throughout the process.
Tell the public what BMP stands for.
Best management practice. I'm sorry. Then what you see on the bottom as well of your sheet number 5 gives you a total of work completed today, a total of number of acres that we have addressed, and we're at 1,634.8 acres. Now that is about 20 acres over what is required, but just so you know, there's a couple of practices that we've included in our sheet 5 that is work completed that still is on the table as to whether it's going to be an acceptable practice from MDE, and those acres total around 400 acres. So we are showing them as taking credit, and they are being considered for credit as we speak, but we have not been officially awarded the credit for those particular practices.
So this is an accumulated amount?
It is.
Okay, so where it's accumulated, however, we only get credit for them
every year.
Every year.
Every year, except for a couple of practices, we only receive credit one time a year, and those numbers change each year.
Okay.
So there's a couple of practices that, like septic removal, clean out removal, and street sweeping and that sort of thing, is every year those numbers change.
Okay.
A little bit here, a little bit there. Nothing substantial enough to throw any red flags up for us. And then the percentage that you see, 101.3, basically says that we're over the amount of impervious area needed to be treated under this permit requirement.
What happens if we don't get the other 400 acres gets approved? Then we're not at 100%.
Okay, so I will say that the next couple of, actually the next sheet's going to tell you where we're at with the stuff that's on the planning and the CIP. So we're comfortable with realizing that we will be way beyond that number of what we need to get to.
Okay.
So if you have any questions on that particular sheet, otherwise I'll move on to the next one.
You get to this number, will the state raise your threshold for the next year?
Well, again, Commissioners, I think that's part of the dilemma we're under right now. We don't know, because we're completing one permit, we're getting ready to get another one, and we don't know what the requirement's going to be in the next permit. We have seen a draft, but that draft was over a year ago, and before it went to EPA. Our anticipation is that, yes, there will be additional, well, let me put it this way, not anticipation. There will be additional impervious mitigation that we have to do, but they're also wanting to switch from just impervious to nutrient reductions, and I don't want to complicate things here today, but they want to almost do a change to a different accounting method, how they require, what they require us to do. So the short answer is yes.
This is real important what you just said, though. I want the public to get this. You said they're going to go to a different tracking mechanism or accounting from number of acres treated to actual nutrient reduction.
Yes.
And the point I want to make for the public here, the spreadsheets we're looking at, we're going to spend $60 million of tax money complying with this, yet it's really checkbox management. We're required to do this under federal NPDES permit and by the state, but the fact of the matter is we treat these thousands of acres and nobody checks in advance to say, gee, is the water even polluted? We just spend money doing it so we can check the boxes, get our permit reviewed, all forced down on us by the EPA and the MDE.
Well, if I could, Commissioner, I would like to, a little bit of a correction to that, if I could.
Sure.
Yes, we are an accounting, this is an accounting process, but I don't want anybody, either you all or the public, to think that this effort does not achieve something, because the methods, the things that we're doing in Carroll County, and I don't want to speak for other counties, what we're doing is resulting in actual improvements in our local waterways and our streams. We can see it. We have it documented. When we do these practices, these stormwater retrofits, you can go out there and walk down below these streams that were traditionally or historically pretty much in a mess. And they have started to heal themselves or have healed themselves almost instantaneous from the time we do these practices. So I'm not saying that everything we do is not just a bean counting process.
Sure.
I will admit it is. But these things that our bulk of our money is used for and the efforts that we're doing are actually resulting in true restoration of the environment in Carroll County. And that's what it's all about in our minds.
How does Carroll County rank statewide for what we're doing on these type projects? In your own opinion, maybe not official, but...
I think that we are up there as one of the leaders. Whether we end up being the only one that achieves this 20% in this round of permits, it's possible that could happen. So I want to say that we're right up there where we need to be. And our goal is always be to not compare ourselves to others, but to say we got a job to do and we're going to do it. And we're not going to leave ourselves vulnerable by not complying, even though we're fighting a lot of things.
You two calling one another?
I agree with your assertions.
Thank you.
It just drives me crazy to say, because some of the projects really are needed and they really have significant returns on investment. and other projects we just have to do because of the bean counting checkbook with $60 million. And as you and I have discussed,
Yes.
the return on investment in terms of pounds of pollution we take out is really small compared to what we could be doing elsewhere.
I agree, Commissioner, but what I want to say is I hope you have the confidence that what we're doing here means something. I would not want to say that for other jurisdictions.
I've actually seen some of the results of your efforts, and it is unbelievable. You're probably not designed for the size storms we've had or some of the rains, and yet it's still working. So I do appreciate the effort and where we are in this.
Right. I can just, one example, the Westminster High School pond, the project we did that's out there along 97, it's very visible to folks. These large storms we've had all this year, from what I understand, talking to our folks, I don't think it ever went out over the spillway. It never went out over the top for those large, and those were storms that actually exceeded what we thought was its design capacity, but it obviously is operating a lot better. So yes, Commissioner.
So an advertisement in favor of your department, it's on a parallel issue. Those of our citizens that survived the rain, the typhoon rains we've had this summer and didn't get flooded can attribute that to good stormwater management practices.
Well, yeah, but there were a lot, Commissioner, who found out that there are floodplains and drainways where they didn't think they were.
Yes, there were. Yeah.
There were.
And I know that because I got so many calls.
Yes, so have we. Okay.
Okay, so anyone else have any questions on the first sheet number 5? So let's move to sheet number 1. And sheet number 1 is basically going to tell you the future projects that we have in our CIP. So these projects have been presented to you during your CIP process, and what basically the presentation on the PowerPoint is showing, what you see is the total next 2 years is what we anticipate treating impervious acre-wise of 831.9 acres, and basically that's where your answer to your question, Commissioner Frazier, comes in. That next 2 years will be the final 2 years of our permit process. So December of 2019 is the projected ending of our 5-year term, and we anticipate getting another 831 acres completed by then. So we're anticipating that being another 51%. So with that being said, when you look at the next line down, the total permit term numbers, we will be at 2,466 acres, and that's 152% of our 20% requirement. So we will be well above what we're needed to be at that point. And then the next line you see is projected out to 2023, which is what Tom indicated. Some of those have been highlighted in orange, those years, because those are ones we're not sure what the permit's going to require us to do. But we do have projects planned out to that point, which will take our numbers up to 2,828.9 acres, or 175% of the 20% requirement. So at that point, that's where we anticipate being when it comes to 2023, if all goes according to plan.
Wow.
Have any questions? Okay. All right, so we'll go on to sheet number 2. And this is where I'd like to thank Doreen and Lynn once again. I know they were thanked a couple of times, but I so greatly appreciate their help with all the work that they did on this. And the sheets that I'll be presenting next are ones that they worked on themselves, and they're here to answer any questions you may have if I can't provide you with the answers that you need. So these sheets, basically this sheet number 2 indicates the cost associated with impervious acre treatment. So those costs, what you're seeing on the PowerPoint presentation, the subtotal operation and pay-go would be your operating expenses associated with the work, which includes staff support, and also your debt service payments. Then your next column would be your total expenses, and that would include municipality and developer contributions, debt service, and grants and partners as well. And then your total impervious surface restoration plan cost, which exclude the debt services, is $54,529,880. And basically, they're excluding the debt service information because the actual cost for the impervious acre treatment, debt service is not considered the cost for construction and engineering. It's the cost of paying the debt down of the bonds that were used.
How much of this will we likely get in grants of the 54 million? Just percentage-wise, approximately.
Well, I think the concerns that I have coming up are, we were very fortunate to get just shy of $14 million over the last couple of years. But because all the counties are now aggressively needing grant funding and working on their projects as well, it should be pretty challenging for us to keep that rate up. So I'm hoping that if we get $1 million a year, we're going to be lucky. So I'm just going to lay that out there. It's been wonderful up to this point, but there are other people now vying for the grants, and it's going to make it a little bit more difficult.
So if that's all we're going to get is $1 million, does that mean that Carroll County taxpayers are going to have to absorb another $3 to $5 million a year, Tom?
No, I don't believe.
No, because if you look at the out years, let me just
go right ahead, Gil, please.
If you look at the out years, we did not include any grants in the out years, because if you look under grants and partners, we did not include anticipating receiving funding from grant funding or partners in the out years. But we're still, when you look at the bottom percentage of what is anticipated, we're still 110%, which means that what we're anticipating or what we have budgeted for, we're over 10% of what we need compared to what we're expecting to pay over the next couple of years.
So our current 5-year operating plan assumes the worst case, which is we get virtually no grants.
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's good.
When it says partners, are you talking about the municipalities and the towns and so forth?
That's correct.
No, I'm sorry. Partners are
Oh, I'm sorry.
people that come in to the, like Eldersburg Business Center, who we participated with on a project, and they paid a certain amount of money, and we pay a certain amount. So anybody that contributes to our restoration work outside of grants would be considered our partners.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that under the Clean Water Act, the federal government's rights to force us to expend monies was only on non-point sources, and if for point sources, they have to pay us or they can't make us do it under federal laws, if I'm correct.
That may be, Commissioner, but this is considered, stormwater is that beast that falls on both sides of that edge, you realize that.
But didn't Judge Ian McGrady in Virginia rule that stormwater is not a pollutant, therefore it's not under the ambit of the EPA and the Clean Water Act?
Well, I'm not familiar with the case you might have indicated, so I don't know if I can comment on that, Commissioner.
The point is this, the government, the final point I want to make, then I'll yield, is that we are being forced to spend $50 million of tax money, and arguably, constitutionally, and under the federal law, which was the original source of this, the federal government had no right under law to do this, and they're doing it because we let them. I just want to make it clear.
The total cost on this, is this total cost to us, or is this only 80% from us because we're supposed to get 20% from municipalities to help with these projects?
The municipality is in here as far as their contribution, and you're correct to say that it's 20% of the impervious area, basically. That's how we base that number.
So that's all included.
Right.
The municipality amounts are included in this. This is a total effort for the permit, and they are our co-permittees, so we're all one.
There's, on the chart, it's almost $5 million, but the
Yes.
cost column.
Yes.
Right, okay, I see.
Just shy.
Yeah.
I would say it's impressive to see how, the staff has really reached out to look at different, kind of out of the box, to look at different sources, whether it be grants, working with our municipalities, the private partners that we have, as Ms. Ingalls indicated, reaching out to some people who may have to do work on their stormwater facilities, i.e. down at the Eldersburg Business Park, where they had their facility failed. I mean, the dam failed. So they had to go in there and actually fix it. That was their responsibility. Our staff approached them and said, hey, can we make that facility bigger? And by making it bigger, the county gets credit for it. So they did the work. All we did is put our share per impervious acre in, which was very low, and we got the credits And I think that's a very good working, with partners to try and look at opportunities to save money. And that was a large number of impervious acres.
What happens in the event, and I'm not going to get too specific here, but there was a facility in my district that...
You got facilities in your district, Commissioner?
Yeah, apparently.
Oh.
That the stormwater management was, what would you say, eliminated? And then it was, we went out there and attempted to help them.
This is a private property.
Yeah, well, I'm just, what happens to that when it comes to our credits? Is that used against us, or how does that, in the event that that happens, how does that work for these numbers and the reporting? Does it not? Because it was there, and then it's not.
I guess what I would say is we are responsible for, unfortunately, let me say it a different way. Unfortunately, we're responsible for all imperviousness in the county, and whether it's treated or not treated.
And whether it's private or not,
that's
right?
correct. And if it's treated, we have to inspect it and make sure it stays there.
Right, which is why I'm asking the question,
Right.
because what happens to our credits if some, and I understand that that's sort of an anomaly, I
Yes,
get that,
yes.
but in the event that that happens, does that count against us?
Probably in several different ways. First, because it's not being treated anymore, we would have to ensure that it gets treated. And second, we are responsible for making sure it gets treated. So there are compliance issues to deal with there because it's gone now and it should have been there. And then there are also the fact that, yes, that area is not being treated anymore.
Right. I guess my
So-
point in bringing it up is, people should pay attention to this because of issues that could occur as a result of someone just saying, well, it's a ditch. We didn't need that, so we covered it over.
Right.
We're going to park a truck there now. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Oh,
It's
yeah, I know what you mean now. I got it.
Okay, got it?
Sorry.
You on the same page with me now?
Oh,
Gail
yes, very
already
much so.
was, so was
I know.
Martin. So they were nodding, you were like, what? So now okay. So, but that happens, which could affect
Yes. Yes.
these reports.
And Commissioner, we ultimately are responsible to the state and actually to the federal government if those facilities are not replaced and put back. Even though there's personal responsibility by the private property owners, we as the overseer of those are responsible also.
Which
So
affects the bottom line financially for us as well, right?
It could, yes.
Even though they're gonna have to fix it, it affects,
Yes.
it affects us in a financial way, in a negative part of this.
And staff time and
et cetera, et cetera,
a lot
et
of other
cetera.
things.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why I think, when people look at this and they, their eyes are gonna gloss over, there are situations like that that make this very important.
Yes, sir.
So I want to read, because I'm going to be outgoing, I do want to make sure I share this with you, because this is going to come back to continue to bite us. But this is an article from January of 2013, and Virginia had sued the EPA, claiming the EPA was literally treating water itself, the very substance of the Clean Water Act, as a pollutant. And then they go on to say that a federal judge ruled Thursday that the EPA exceeded its authority by trying to regulate groundwater as a pollutant. Quote, stormwater runoff is not a pollutant, so the Environmental Protection Agency is not authorized to regulate it, unquote, said federal judge Liam O'Grady, who sided with Virginia in the ruling. So I want you to be aware that while we say we have to do this under the EPA, we don't. We're doing it anyway, though.
What's that news source? Is that National Enquirer or
this-
something? Just
Mr.
curious.
Frazier, I can give you 100 sources for this.
Well,
if
what
you'd
is the
like.
news source for that? That's what I'm asking.
This one here, there are sources that include the Daily Caller, Richmond Times, Washington Post. Which one
Okay.
would you like me to read? The quote's the same in all of them, Mr.
I was just
Frazier.
wondering where it came from, Commissioner, that's all.
If I could, just for some clarity, I believe it, and I could be mistaken, that case involved where the state wanted to, the EPA through the state wanted to regulate the flow of water, the actual flow of water. And I think what the court said is the flow of water is not the pollutant. The things that are in the flow, which the flow generated, are the pollutants. So you can't regulate like the volume of water coming off of it. You can't regulate the gallons coming off of it. But what you have to do is say those gallons can only contain a certain amount of a substance. Does that make sense? So you have to treat those gallons down to a certain level. And I think that's where it was, Commissioner, where it was like going to the stream where you can't discharge, 1,000 gallons off, but what the actual flow of it, what they said is that 1,000 gallons can't contain more of X pounds of a substance.
Right.
So in order to get over that, you have to provide treatment. Is that treatment to that 1,000 gallons to reduce the quantity?
Tom, isn't it true that when we have to treat so many percentages of acres, like 20%, nobody from the state or federal government says you have to check them first to see if they're in excess. You just treat them. There's no qualitative testing requirement before treating them. It's just checkbox.
That's, Commissioner, I would agree with you. Yeah, there's an assumed reduction that takes place there. That's correct.
Assumed.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
So are there any more questions on sheet number 2? Okay, so we'll go to sheet number 3. And that basically is funds used to meet the program. And those funds that are used to meet the program are things like the general fund, property taxes, municipalities, developer contributions, bonds, and grants. And so basically, what the PowerPoint is showing under your annual revenue for the ISRP, that's the numbers that you're going to see in there is based on the revenues, funds, and sources that I mentioned. The annual cost toward the program comes from the sheet that we just discussed, where we talked about the total expenditures. So those numbers were brought over, and they were plugged into this area of where the costs are generated from. And then what they're basically saying is that, once again, the revenues are at 16% over what the cost will be to run the program. And the criteria is that we are at 100%.
Let me ask something. I want to follow Commissioner Rothschild a little bit. We're over, we're going to meet our 20%, obviously over for this requirement. What would happen if we were, say, 10% under? What would have been the repercussions?
Well, Commissioner, we may find that out because I think there are some people who aren't going to make the mark. What the state is actually allowing, though, what they've recently passed, and they're opening some of the larger jurisdictions permits to do, is allow what they call trading. And what they're saying is that if you have a wastewater treatment plant that is overperforming, in other words, it's taking out more nutrients than it was designed to do, you can actually trade what they call trade in time. And what that means is you're basically borrowing credits from the wastewater treatment plant while you catch up. But you are going to be required to catch up. And what they're saying is if you have enough excess in your wastewater treatment plants in your jurisdiction to borrow from to meet this requirement, and they have a conversion from nutrients to impervious acres, you can do that and avoid non-compliance. But you can only use that for 50%. This is getting 50% of what you're required to do.
Can you buy that from someone else? In other words, if we have overage and another county close to us doesn't, can they come to us and buy our overage?
I do not believe that's the case. I think you can only do it within your jurisdiction.
So wouldn't mind selling that somebody.
Nutrient trading could have solved our budget problem.
But again, it's only temporary, so that they can catch up, and then you have to still do the real projects to get your 20% by. So if you think about it, it's gonna cost you a lot more because
you pay later or pay now.
If you're a jurisdiction and you're just trading within yourself, then it might not be that case.
So two comments about that, since I only have 3 weeks to go, but I want this to be out there. Number one, when the state allocated these reductions, they go as far as to say that they didn't consider return on investment or maximum impact or marginal rate of return. They use social justice as one of their allocating criteria. So in other words, if you were a heavy polluter but you didn't have a lot of money, you got a free pass. Okay, that's number one. And number two, with respect to nutrient trading, the problem we had to have in nutrient trading, even though we're moving in that direction, the problem is stupid liberal policies conflicted with each other. And as a case in point would be rural counties, they're trying to stop rural development, but the fact of the matter is putting a house on 3 acres of land puts out much less pollution and nutrients than 3 acres of farming. So on one hand, they say they want to save farmland, but on the other hand, that contradicted their, I'm not attacking farming, I'm just pointing out that the inconsistencies of the policy. So if they try to go to nutrient trading, the only logical thing you can do if you want to reduce pollution using their trading schemes was to convert farmland into houses, and obviously that's not good policy. We'd all starve to death. But that's the problem with the policies conflicting with each other.
I think we have, many times a 3-acre runoff can be much greater off of a lawn than off farming, especially with nutrient management plans and where they're following and precision application. I think you're, I have to see the documentation.
Well, actually, Commissioner Weaver, that's an interesting comment, because what they tried to do at the when we had the Planned Maryland to Crossroads Forum in 2011, we demonstrated that what the goofballs did down at the Maryland Department of the Environment in 2011 is they assumed that people on 3 acres of land fertilize it. And anybody that has large lots know you almost never see anybody with large lots fertilizing. It's too difficult to cut. And when you took the fertilizer loads out, it turned out that the 3-acre estate home put out much less pollution than 3 acres of farming. I'm not arguing in favor of if we need our farmland to feed ourselves, but the policies created all kinds of odd conflicts, and that's why nutrient trading has been so hard to do, because what works with one special interest group hurts another special interest group. I'm sorry.
That's not the focus today.
Yeah, just interesting stuff.
But just to finalize your follow-up, Commissioner Weaver, there are measures being put in place to help those folks who aren't going to meet their goal get to their goal, but they ultimately will have to do the real practices to get there. It's just they're getting relief into the next permit. So
I find Carroll County actually does things, they make it happen, and we sometimes get kicked for doing it right, but a lot of these others keep putting it off, but thank you guys for doing it right. We're actually the ones making it happen.
I would agree, Commissioner, and it's all due to our staff. I hope you all know that the staff are just phenomenal.
And I agree also with that comment.
Any other questions on sheet 3?
Great to ask that.
One more.
Okay, so we're going to go to sheet 4, which is the last sheet that we'll discuss today. And basically, sheet 4 is pulling numbers from sheet 3 of the sources of funding, which you see on the total annual sources of funding. So they're coming from sheet 3, which we just discussed. And then the percentages are based on looking at the expenditures and looking at the revenues, and then determining basically determining what the percentage of how much your revenues are going toward your program. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm sure you see a low percentage in the current fiscal year, and that's due to we did not have any debt service that year. That was because of grant funding, I think. We didn't need to do any debt service that year, so that brought that number down to 44%. And then basically the rest of the percentages you see are out, and we are tickled to death that we're hanging there between 90 and 100%. So that's basically, we're feeling comfortable that that's where we want to be. So then when you look down in the 71% is basically the subtotal of operating and pay-go on sheet 2 for the permit term which is the past up through, well, it's actually 2015 to 2020. So we used those totals when we determined the 71%. So then the other total was for expenditures of 81% is the expenditures from sheet 2, and the total annual sources, which included the pay-go and everything, that then made us at 81%. So anyone have any questions on any of the sheets that I reported on?
All right. So I guess the next steps, Commissioner, we need to add a brief narrative there. It won't be very much. I think the sheets are going to be self-explanatory. So we're requesting you allow us to proceed to a public hearing. We tentatively scheduled that for November 29th, and we plan on having our submittal ready and into the state before or on December 29th. That is also when our annual report is due. So we're working on both items.
Okay, I'll move the Board of Commissioners to approve the request for the Department of Land Resource Management, Bureau of Resource Management, to proceed with scheduling a public hearing on the proposed 2018 Financial Assistance Assurance Plan as required by law.
Second.
For motion and a second, any further discussion?
What does brief narrative to be added mean? I don't, what are you gonna?
We just basically can, if we want to, we can add some of the things that we've done.
Okay.
In her,
over and above what you've already listed here.
Well, no, well, some of the things that Gail has put in there as listed, they don't go in actually some of the spreadsheets. So if we wanted to, we could add in there some specific projects, some examples we gave of partnerships.
Okay.
With we could add some of those things that kind of embellish on the numbers.
Okay, got it.
All right.
Because the numbers, they're so prescribed.
Right.
Right.
A little bit of
Yes.
opportunity to
Okay.
explain your program a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Briefly.
I'm good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Now we're going to
Commissioner.
move on to request approval to proceed for public hearing. The code changes to Chapter 151, Stormwater, and Chapter 152, Grading and Sediment Control. And we will be joined by Martin Cummington.
Okay, Commissioners, thank you very much. Today, we're here for the two other actions to request to go to public hearing. One of them is related to our Chapter 152, which is our Grading and Erosion Sediment Control chapter, and the second one is our Chapter 151, which is Stormwater Management. These actions are to update the referred codes per the changes in state law. There's some requirements or changes in state law that we're required to amend in our code, as well as some adjustments related to staff-identified editorial and procedural modifications. So the documents were provided to you as standalone changes, so you have basically, you see just the changes that are proposed, and then we've also provided you with the changes in context, so you'll be able to see how they fall into the code if there's any question about how it reads in its entirety. The red changes that you see, you should have in front of you, are the ones that are state mandated. The blue ones are the ones that county staff are recommending. Both of the changes were presented and vetted through our engineering surveyor community, and that was done through the Bureau of Development Reviews Development Information System on October 15th, 2018. So they have been and distributed and made available to those communities for their comments. And I don't think we've received anything to date, but again, you know, they'll have this period here where we're the public hearing process period that they can also provide comments. And we'll be bringing any of those to you at the public hearing. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Ingalls and Mr. Covington, and they can go briefly through some of the changes with you, and if you have any comments, you know, please feel free to inquire.
So we're going to go ahead with the Stormwater 151 first, and Martin's going to present related to the changes.
I'm just going to kind of run through the description, and anybody wants, if you want to ask any questions, please do. The first part was just definitions. We made some updates there. The really minor stuff, it all had to do with NRCS they don't call their resource management system plan that anymore. They call it a soil conservation plan, things like that. We changed those to match the current practices. And we incorporated by reference the additions to the Carroll County supplement, the stormwater supplement, which is all our procedures and design aids that we put together over all these years. The next one, which is quite important actually, was the one Tom was just talking about, this exemption description. We have found out that the state gave, MDE gave definition to state highway that basically said that if you're putting back paving to the same line and grade that it was before, or you're not digging down, disturbing the ground underneath, you no longer have to look at that as disturbance, which puts it right out. That's a beautiful thing. It takes it out of basic maintenance, winding up requiring stormwater approvals, takes it out of, I don't have to look at it. We don't have to pay attention to it. That's great. So we've added that definition in right in our code, make it very clear that that's not something that people need to worry about. Redevelopment, which is our next, the next page or so here. That's the bottom of this page where they just have it together.
That is a policy that we had already in place. We worked out a policy with the state government to allow us to let folks buy into our stormwater facilities as we rebuilt them. That's been very successful. People have been very interested in doing that. It was a written policy. We now just put it right in the code, made it very official that you can do that.
Marty, how come we limit it to publicly owned stormwater facility as opposed to a public or privately owned stormwater facility? Why wouldn't we let them buy into a privately owned one?
Well, the policy we have with the state was limited to the publicly owned ones. We have helped organize private people to do that, but the one with the state policy that they gave us, that we also, that they handed to us, was limited to publicly owned.
So, but this is actually an issue right now somewhere. Is there anything that prevents us from saying public or private? I mean, just because they have their guidelines, I think it ought to say public or privately owned stormwater facility that provides, as long as the facility is providing full quality and quantity management of the water, what do we care whether it's publicly or privately owned? If two developers want to get together and build one facility and let one of them wants to use the other, we should let them, even though they're private.
We can check into that.
Yeah, we can certainly check into that. This is for redevelopment situations, but I wouldn't have an issue with it being any situation where like that, where a redevelopment situation
it's
occurred.
good practice. It makes sense.
Oh, it's been very popular. I'll just say that.
So
We've had a lot of folks
okay,
want it to
I would ask
participate.
you to consider amending it.
All right.
For that before going to public hearing on that.
Okay, let's just okay.
Sure.
Yes, make a note of that, I guess. Minimum control requirements. We have always looked at downstream impacts for people to see if they needed to do more because there was existing problems, or we knew there was a control structure downstream that was undersized. We've gone ahead and specified what that is, that reason we would make people do that in the code. Then the next one is stormwater management measures. We talk about, and this was something that came up in our own retrofit work. It's very interesting as we work on retrofits ourselves, you see things. We had very specific requirements for conveying water into facilities so the facilities are not damaged by the incoming water. And it's very different whether you're discharging into a pool of water in a wet pond or onto the bottom of a dry pond. So we separated those requirements. No reason to make people do things that aren't necessary. And then the next one was about milk crates. That was popular for a while. People were trying to build these plastic milk crates and assemble them underground for control to hold water. We've simply put out a policy a couple of years ago saying we weren't going to accept that.
Why is that?
They collapsed.
Well, suppose they built stronger milk crates with fiberglass or something that didn't collapse, though.
We had a lot of people come in and tell us they were building ones, and they were loading and so forth and so on, and we accepted all that. And then we had about a third of all the ones that have been built fell in over about a 2-year period.
They were all plastic, though.
Yeah, they were all plastic, yes.
Well, why not require
somebody
prohibit
can
use of plastic and
concrete or some other structure? We have allowed and are still allowing concrete structures. We have people that are putting in dome structures underground, concrete vaults, any of those kind of things. That's all worked well. We're very, very successful with plastic piping and stone. That works really well. The one area that has really been a problem was these milk crates. And for about 2 years now, we have not allowed those.
So is that defined, is a milk crate defined as a plastic assembly?
Oh, yes,
Okay, because I wouldn't want to see us exclude that approach as long as it's something tougher.
It's defined exactly what it is.
Plastic.
Yes, it's plastic.
But a non-plastic similar approach would be
well,
okay.
structurally sound, and I'm really looking for structurally sound.
I get it, okay.
All
right. Okay.
We were very, well, I won't go into all those details. And then the last one, I have something there about multiple owners. Oh yeah, that turned out to be a bit of a problem. If people are doing structural practices, dams that are going to take care of a bunch of commercial owners, it really needs to be on a separate parcel that they all own in common through their association. Then I have added a little clarification about dam breach, about this building stuff in the dam breach area below dams. It's what we've been doing anyway, but clarify the language. And then the last one was we added some language about what's required when you're gonna do an underground facility as far as maintenance and inspection, keeping it operational, and on porous paving. That's a real,
I gotta go, I'm sorry, Mike.
Sure, please,
but
sir.
I gotta go back, because I don't see milk crates defined in the glossary. And yet it says in 16, on page 22, underground milk crate, quote unquote milk crate, stormwater management systems are not allowed. I can handle that as long as it says milk crates made of plastic, but it's not defined anywhere that I can see, and I think it should be.
We will.
Because if somebody devises something better, stronger, we should allow it.
We will do that.
Okay, so just add milk crate as being a plastic milk crate is not allowed in the glossary.
No problem.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great. Let's see, where were we here? Oh, yeah. The next one's maintenance, making sure these underground facilities are maintained, and having the person themselves do the inspection, and putting that in our easement language. And then the last one is just to make our penalty thing at the end be exactly the same wording as every other chapter in the code.
So what is the new penalty?
51.99
penalty.
That, look on page 5, sir.
Yeah, I got it. So it says here, satisfactory corrections are not made by the owner within a 30-day period after issuance. Well, hell, 30 days is nothing, especially in the wintertime.
Do you want to say something?
What do you have?
I'm looking at 151.99, paragraph B1A.
Go ahead.
What typically happens
is a
is
lien can be placed on the property. I mean, I just think that that's kind of draconian for this.
For 30 days, sir? What typically happens.
It takes 30 days to get a contractor to come out and give you a quote half the time.
In weather like this, 30 days, you may not be able to
Oh, that's certainly possible.
solve it.
Well, I think, let me just talk on notice of violations in general. We normally allow 30 days, and as I'm sure everybody's aware, we obviously work with people. We're not gonna basically say, you don't have any more time to work with us. I don't think that we wanna put in like 90 days, because there are violations that sometime could present a problem to downstream property owners or neighbors that need to be addressed pretty quickly. So without letting it blank, the 30 days, maybe we might want to be able to say, maybe we can change the wording to say, we need to have initial contact by 30 days from the property owner, some type of willingness to move forward with the violation, getting it corrected. But I think if you extend the time frame, you're then getting into a point where you may have issues that need to be addressed right away, and allowing them that kind of time frame might be advantageous to someone else downstream. So
I mean, I would be okay if it said something like, we may seek a court order granting authority to enter and lien it under exigent circumstances, such as downstream flooding, which is
hazard,
but I'd hate to see
dam hazard, or some other thing.
Yeah, if there's something exigent, so I understand there might be exigent circumstances that require a 30-day response, but if it's not, I don't want to see us slapping around our citizens in the middle of the winter, or even a code that would theoretically make it possible to slap them around. Not that our staff does that, we normally don't, but I just don't like to pass bad laws.
Again, it says may, the secret order. So the notice of violation would go out if there's nothing done, and, if you don't communicate it with us or whatever, give us a plan.
What would you consider?
Within 30 days, but then it just says you may seek.
What
You try
would
to
you-
get it too specific to certain kinds of situations, it makes it very difficult.
If for some reasons, weather or being the main one, they can't do it, but if they have a plan within a 30-day period that we're gonna do this when the weather is, we can do it, or we've already contacted a contractor, however, because of the length of work, whatever, it can't be done within the 30 days. If you could maybe work that into the language, but the plan is there, ready to go. Go ahead.
Well, Commissioner, I think it's so variable. The issues we deal with vary tremendously across a scope of this code and other codes. And so I think what we need to do, and what we're trying to do, is be consistent with how we approach the process. All right, think of this as a process. So what we're trying to do here is say, okay, you have 30 days. We're going to send out a notice, official notice, that you've got a problem. You have 30 days basically to get back to us, because as Ms. Wyndham indicated, it's a May. So we're setting, you got 30 days. Once they come in, we work with them on a plan and try to get this thing resolved in any way we can. So the problem is we do have people on maybe a pretty regular basis that just ignore this. And the 31st day, they haven't even made contact with us or whatever. So we have to have the ability to be, I hate to say it, serious about this, because if we don't, we have folks that will continue to
I agree.
to take up staff time, never intending to do anything serious and all. So I think what we're trying to do is say, we're going to get this notice out within 30 days. We need to hear from you, or we need to see some type of activity with you, and from that point on, we can work with folks. There's no problem with working with folks. Pardon?
Give me an example of a violation that would trigger this.
Well, I can give you Commissioner Wance's violation, where someone just takes a stormwater facility and it doesn't exist anymore. They fill it in with dirt, or they grade over it, or they destroy it. So I think, you know, that's probably maybe the extreme. The other might be that they just haven't maintained it, and they have trees growing on the breast of the dam or something like that, which seems rather benign.
Right.
But with all the rains and all we got, those trees create instability in the dams, and so if you have people downstream or property downstream, it doesn't even have to be people's houses, just property. I mean, I think there's a wide range of things here that we deal with. And again, part of what we're doing here, we worked very closely with the county attorney's office on this, is provide consistency. So if you're dealing with this stormwater or sediment control or whichever code, where process is consistent, how we're going to approach.
Who wrote this in red? Who actually wrote this in red? Who wrote this change?
I did. Yeah, our office. Now, the county attorney's office was the one that told us the wording of what they wanted to see in there, and that's what you're going to see in the next chapter as well.
Right.
So we can certainly get with the county attorney's office and talk to them about what you're suggesting here today, to maybe reword it to use the word some type of contact needs to be made by the person or something to maybe make it.
Or tie the 30-day limit to exigent circumstances, one or the other. Either one is fine. I just don't see you guys won't be here forever. The law will.
I understand. Well, Commissioner, part of the problem I have with that suggestion is that then puts the burden back on us to prove there's those circumstances. And a violation is a violation. If you're not maintaining it, if you've destroyed, that is it's back on that owner, that facility, to show us they're going to correct it. I'm afraid if we do what you said, then it's back on us to prove that there's a problem there that they have to address.
20 years without this language, Tom, and the world didn't collapse. I mean, that gets worse. I want the public to know why I'm making issues. Because then the very next paragraph, number 2, on page 38, says, the county may seek a civil penalty of not more than $10,000 per day for each violation, each day that a violation continues.
And that's a state law.
This is how you bankrupt somebody.
That is the state requirement. That's
and that was already in the chapter.
Because that's the state law requires that.
Well, and actually,
I just don't like draconian regs.
I think if you read the part that was eliminated there, may take civil action, that's really what they're talking about in paragraph 1A. That's the process to get to the civil action. It wasn't clearly identified prior to the addition of this language in 1A. What did that mean, may take civil action? So this sets forth the process for that, which is the same process we use, as Tom alluded to, for all other enforcement actions. So it's consistent.
I think Commissioner Wance's idea was good. It didn't go as far as I think it was good.
What's that?
You had recommended putting some language into this, which at least stated that in the event the property was moving forward.
I think it was actually Commissioner Frazier.
Commissioner Frazier's?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Frazier, then I'll give you credit. Something along, I'm sorry, it was you now.
Right.
Something along the lines of that as long as the property is moving forward and document is moving forward in good faith, that we show some level of forbearance, except if there's an emergency of some sort, whatever. I mean, if you don't want to put that in there, don't. But something in here, I've seen regulations used to hurt people too much in my life. I've dealt with too many people who've suffered under these, and it's not been a progress. These regulations are not, but now these regulations are getting more draconian. So now I'm getting more nervous.
Well, Commissioner, I would just counter to say they're not getting more draconian, they're getting more defined and better defined.
Yeah.
That allows both staff and the property owner to know the expectation now is very clear of how we're going to proceed. That has not been the case in the past, and it's been very troublesome for both us and the property owners that as we try to, don't take this the wrong way, muddle along through the enforcement process. And so it can be very cumbersome if we don't have very clear processes in place. And as much as I hate to say it, there's a lot more things happening out there, maybe not necessarily on the stormwater side, but on the zoning and other sides that we're having to deal with. And it becomes very problematic for us, you know, to.
And I'll tell you something, Tom, and I'm glad. And I'm glad that they're cumbersome, because when the regulations are too cut and dry, it's too easy to take a sledgehammer to a mosquito. And by having cumbersome remedies, it forces us to focus only on the biggest and the baddest infractions. That's my position.
It's another analogy. It's a good one. Although the 7-Eleven in the Empire State Building was better, but a sledgehammer to a mosquito is pretty good.
You know, one of the things that draws people to Carroll County, I'll speak for myself, is we've always had a government that's had this salt-of-the-earth common sense. We didn't need draconian rules to tell us what to do. And the more we make the rules draconian, the greater the chance that somebody will misuse them. And I know where they're going to be misused already. It's already coming down the pike. You guys are going to feel it in the next 90 days. I won't get into it here. I don't like this draconian stuff. I can see the need for limits, but I like Commissioner Frazier's suggestion that as long as a property owner is moving forward, that the county shall forbear and work with them.
So
You should have an out. This is pretty.
Well, it
down
is,
on
but,
you no matter
but
what.
just to reiterate.
No, it does not say that. I do not think, I would disagree with that. It does not say that. It says we may.
It doesn't say we
say
will.
It does not say we will.
You read this,
It does not.
is pretty.
So the language in red, though, is suggested from the state. Did we take the state?
It's suggested from our county attorney's office.
Okay, well,
Number
why-
two
why
is,
is
number
it-
two is.
Number 2 is, yeah.
Okay, I understand that, but
Right.
my question is, the language in red is coming from the state.
No,
Tom, he has the same question.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't want the full document in context, all the changes are shown in red. When I indicated the blue and red, that was the abbreviated version here that we provided you that shows just the changes, not in context. And we wanted to make sure that you understood there the differences between the red and the blue, all right? And I apologize for the confusion.
Does that make sense?
So the
Yeah.
full
So
code
these are
text,
pretty much-
everything is in red because it shows all the changes. The abbreviated version
Okay.
here, the blue and red, and up in the right-hand corner at the top, it
okay.
says the red
Alright.
is state, the blue is county.
Okay.
Right.
So we are not putting the red in. But the red's going to be in when that goes to public hearing, right?
Everything in red will go
I
to
don't care
public
if the
hearing
state
in
puts
the
it
full
in. I don't
text.
really give a damn. Okay, that's not why we do things like this in Carroll County.
All right,
okay?
Commissioners, if you so choose, that's what we're here today, to have this discussion before we go to public hearing. So you tell us, give us direction as to how you'd like to proceed with this statement.
What's the timeline here on this stuff in reference to having a hearing and including all this new language? Are we under some time constraints here?
I would say we're not under the gun, but these changes were expected to be in our code quite some time ago, 6 to 9 months ago.
Okay.
The state expected their changes to be incorporated.
We're seeing this today. I don't even want to. I'm going to have time to read it and digest it and see how.
Well, that's maybe the
repercussions to it.
basis for my question, because there's a lot here.
Yes. A lot of major
Not
changes.
that I'm not questioning the value of your input into this, which is, it is your, I mean, you're the folks that deal with it day in and day out, so I get that, but because of some of these questions that come up, maybe we ought to have a little bit extra time just to absorb some of this language. I don't know.
I don't have a problem, but I don't have a problem with what you said, but if you're looking at the specific one that we're looking at right now, it says if satisfactory corrections of notice of violations not made by the owner within 30-day time period. If you could define what satisfactory corrections were, that might be the answer right there. You don't have to change the language at all, what the satisfactory corrections mean.
And that's usually based on the violation notice that goes out. Each individual site is gonna be different
Right.
on what the violations are, so it's gonna be kinda hard to reference what the violations are, I guess?
Well, I meant,
because
well,
they're
what
gonna
I
be-
meant by that, satisfactory corrections could be, the homeowner has a plan in place and they've contracted a contractor to get it done. However, because of whatever, it hasn't started yet. And if it's reasonable because of whatever, and your staff would determine that, then that's okay. Or satisfactory corrections could be in another instance that it's done.
Well, that's the whole purpose of the May. I mean,
Yeah,
if they're
I see that.
in their opinion, in the
Yes.
county's opinion,
Right.
if there's satisfactory corrections,
Right.
then that's it. If there are not satisfactory corrections, then we may
That's-
take it to the next level.
That's
of
correct.
their
You are leaving it open
No,
for them to make
I would
that
agree with you, Roberta,
determination.
if it said
Yeah,
actions
okay,
instead of
okay.
corrections, but corrections suggests that it's been fixed. And what Commissioner Frazier is talking about is actions. If the homeowner's taken satisfactory
change the
actions
actions,
to
can't we?
proceed towards the corrections.
Well,
We can say satisfactory corrective actions, just like we referenced in the first paragraph.
Yeah, okay.
I don't mind changing
I think
that.
that's good, that's good.
Would you agree?
I like that.
And that still gives the county
Right.
the opportunity, it's really hard to enumerate
Yeah,
all of the potentials.
you're right.
Corrective actions towards complying with the notice of violations, towards complying. Corrective actions towards compliance with the notification of violations.
Let's not water it down too much.
Corrective actions towards complying
Is that a pun?
with the notice of
I
violations.
thought that was sort of stated, because what are you gonna do other than comply, but we can add, toward compliance, that doesn't, I mean, that's the whole reason for the notice.
I want to balance the power here, okay? I want to balance the power. I understand Tom and Gail's and Marty's arguments that there's got to be some kind of objective, but I also want it, I want to balance the power in these regs. And I think Commissioner Frazier's suggestion is the best one.
Just snowing.
Are you okay with satisfactory what did I say?
Corrective
Actions towards
Yeah.
correcting the notice of. Now,
Toward-
that could be a lot of things, John, way. We don't have to put this in the regs, but if they say, here's the contract, I've hired so-and-so to do it, and by the way, here's a receipt for the down payment on the work, I've paid them $5,000, whatever, that can be your discretion.
Absolutely, and they would never,
But I just want to make it clear that when somebody's moving forward, I don't want to see us threaten them, or even have the ability to threaten them.
In the top part of this, section D, what's certified on this? What do they have to do to, it's a triannual.
Mr. Covington?
Certification would take an
Oh,
engineer
okay,
to certify it? or-
Well, they're different ones, sir.
Where are you?
I tried to set this up.
D.
That's one above it.
D.
This is, I've got some paperwork I put together. The things that, the big thing is the underground facilities. When people are putting in, that's very popular. It's the very thing that the commissioner was asking about earlier, not the milk crates, but the pipes or the concrete vaults, those kind of things. They have to be inspected, and they're structures. And we were trying to set this up so the county wouldn't have to have its own people going in and doing that. First off, that's underground, right? It's a hazardous situation.
On private property.
Yeah, I'm talking about privately owned ones. That's what this is all about. Privately owned, right. And you have to have a confined space entry certification, so on and so forth. So instead of us doing that all the time, every 3 years, we have to turn in a report. Only go in once every 3 years. The other 2 years, let the owner themselves go in, or someone that's working for them who's certified, and just write back to us, send us a picture, fill out the form, show that it's still operational, send a copy on the email, and we're gonna have a little procedure set up where to send it. And then when our inspector shows up, and when our inspector shows up, he can see that they did look at it, and he can basically just stick his head down in there and say, okay, cool, and move along. It's what this really is trying to make sure it's inspected and not add another layer of work that has to be done by county staff.
So you're getting certified and inspecting it also?
That will come, not every year.
Not every year, but trying to, so the private property owner has to have it certified that it's working, and then we send an inspector out to.
Just spot check at least every 3 years, Gail? Sorry, every 3 years, right. I probably said that in here, actually. Triannually, yes.
Seems redundant. I don't know,
Well,
it's just, if you have a private company certifying it, or an engineer, and then you're sending an inspector out too?
Well, Commissioner, we are required through our MPDS permit and all, that we have to have those inspections verified, every 3 years for all the BMPs in the county, across the entire county. So that.
So we don't have a
Yes.
choice on that.
That's correct.
Okay.
And this is one item that the state did flag us in. They did an inspection of our program, and this is one thing they said, they want these facilities, people to go in them and look at them and make sure they're functioning properly. So this is one item that we were required to add to our code.
By the state.
That's correct.
I do have a confined space entry, and I have gone down to some of our own, ones that we own. And, we certainly don't want our people to have to go into every single one.
Well, we don't want our people doing privately owned
Amen.
facilities
That's what I
going
mean.
into.
Right.
Yes.
No way.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, and then there's one last thing here.
Just to say one thing, I'm not trying to give the three of you a hard time. You're the best of the best, all three of you. You're the best, you're the creme de la creme. But I want to make it clear, the people that write these regs and force them down on us, they're not elected by the people of this county. It's our job to do what we're doing. And I'm proud of all of you because you're all doing a great job here. To question some of this, and that's what we have to do sometimes.
That's fine.
It's all right.
And we'll provide you our justification if we can.
Because
And
when
then-
these regulations take place, who gets the phone calls? We get them, and then we transfer them to you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I had the answer to that.
However, I'm trying to eliminate the phone calls before we get them, that's all. And,
Well, you're not gonna eliminate that. That's gonna.
No, you're
hold.
not gonna eliminate that, but let's make it, that balance, that has to happen here. And I don't wanna be dictatorial to people out here in private enterprise or free enterprise doing things. And yet, there's people who will abuse it, I agree, and that's what you're trying to get away from, and I see that. However, I don't wanna punish people either in this, so that's part of it.
And we, in our enforcement of this, we would not punish people unless
You don't.
that is the ultimate.
You don't presently, but, we're not all gonna be here sometime, and these laws are
Understood.
gonna stay.
I
And we
understand.
gotta, as Commissioner Rothschild said, they may be interpreted totally differently 10 years from now, and
Well, I'm hoping, Commissioner, through our succession training, that never happens.
good answer.
All right.
And then the last thing was.
Suffice it to say, our
Go ahead.
Constitution was designed to protect our people against the dangers of men with good intentions. They intend to be governed well, they intend to govern. They tend to be good masters, but they tend to be our masters nonetheless. Senator Daniel Webster.
The last thing, and then I can stop, so my people, anyway, the last thing is, of course, now 8, 9 years ago, I put together a whole section, a whole little booklet of procedures and design aids and things like that. And some of those things had to be changed because the code changes and so on and so forth. And then some of them are things that are just fixes because as things have occurred in the last 8 years, some wording had to change, code numbers had to change. These are all things to help people do the plans. And that's what this last thing is about. That's these additional pages or replacement pages. And that's it.
The design manual.
Yes, the design manual.
Yes. And I will say, Commissioners, just to put a plug in
Well, should I interrupt?
for Martin, that this is strictly and completely geared to help people in Carroll County. This is not a state mandated document here per se. It's a state approved document, but it's not a mandated document. And everything here has been designed over the years to assist our local folks in getting through the processes, whether it provides shortcuts or easy ways to do calculations to forms that are very easily filled out, and they can move through the process a lot better through the documentation process. So, I think you should take this as being a very beneficial and helpful supplement to those possibly perceived to be burdensome regulations.
Well, that's what we called it. We called it the supplement to the state manual, the Carroll County supplement.
It's a lot of pages here.
Is that all the
This
changes?
was the easy part.
It is there's a lot of pages, but all the changes are right here.
Yep.
Everything that
Yes.
changes, you've already gone over every change.
Yep.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
And we've hashed them out. Does anyone think we need to have a longer time, or can we send this to public hearing?
I would like to see this come back, have time to read it, digest it,
Yep.
look at all the discussion before we act on it. There's a lot of significant size paper here to deal with.
Well, if you all feel that way.
You agree?
I think the intentions behind this are good, but
Yeah, I do too.
I've got some concerns still. I want to read some of this.
From the changes that were made, I think as long as you put the additional word of actions in that one thing, I'm happy with everything that's there. And I mean, if you all want more time, it's fine, but we went over everything. It's all here.
Well, I'm confused by
Discussion, and give us,
Okay?
you know, I think part of our principles operating is we want to have things and have time to digest it, then vote on it, not do it all at once.
Yeah, we're not voting on this. All we're doing for this is sending it to public hearing.
Well, that's-
After it comes back from public hearing, we'll have a time to go over this again.
But what are we sending? That's what we gotta
Oh, I see. These are
be careful
historical
about.
changes. Well,
But
I'd just like to see there's one or two changes implemented, that's all. I see, this is all, we went through the whole thing, is what you're saying. And most of it is self-evidently reasonable. There's like these two things, I'd like to see the exact language before we send this to public hearing. I mean, if you want to mark it up and
Well, it'd be sent with those changes, but.
I don't want this going out without those changes, that's why I can't.
yeah, well, you could
approve
make,
it.
we
Well,
could
it
make a
certainly
motion
would.
that this goes to
Yeah.
public hearing
I
with
mean,
the changes that
right.
were discussed today.
Right, right.
Matter of fact,
Yeah,
I'll
you-
make that motion.
You've got it, right?
Yes.
You've got what we're
Yep.
looking for,
Mhm.
specific language
Okay.
there? Well,
We
then,
can actually shoot it up, if that's okay, the language changes real quick to you guys, just to take a brief look at it before it
Yeah,
goes
that's
out if
fine.
you want.
I mean, I'm good with it.
I would like that, I'd like to see, it's only
Okay.
That's fine.
2 paragraphs, I mean, it'll take you 10 minutes probably,
Yep.
I just don't want to have to
Yep.
craft it here, but I just want to make it clear. My interpretation of Commissioner Frazier's recommendation was if they're taking action towards complying, that's a much different issue than correction.
Right.
It may be impossible to make the correction in 30 days.
Right.
Especially if there's a foot of snow on the ground, and it's 20 degrees outside.
I agree. So,
And while I trust our staff, things change.
so I'll make the motion that we move this forward to public hearing, subject to us getting the changes that we've talked about today back and looking at them, and if we're in agreement, because that way we can move it, and if we're not, we can halt it. So subject to us getting the changes back that we can see through, I guess, through an email would be the quickest, easiest way to do it. And then, I don't know how else to finish that motion, but.
Yeah, with those two
That's fine.
changes
Okay.
to be confirmed by the commissioners via email.
Okay.
Okay. Or I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
aye.
I'll just say you seconded that. So, and opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 3 to
I'd
1.
like to wait a week and digest it. There's a lot of information to go through without in such a hurry. It could affect a lot of people.
Commissioner Howard has seconded things and then voted against them.
Well, you can do that, I know.
Okay, Commissioners, thank you very much for that. We'll move right into
think
Chapter
that was
152. I think these, I hope, will be a little bit, although
It was
there
a
are some of the
shorter
same
chapter.
topics here. Pardon?
That was a shorter chapter. It's a joke, go.
152.
152 is our grading, erosion, and sediment control chapter. And it has to do with actually activities during the construction phase, when you're
Give me
actually
some
disturbing
Maalox.
ground. Pardon?
Yes, it give me some Maalox.
Go ahead.
So what I'll let Ms. Ingles go through those. And again, let me make it clear, the one document that you have, which just shows the changes, the red are state required, the blue are county. The other document, which shows everything in context, it shows it in red, so those are just all the changes that are going to take place in that document.
Got it.
Right? They're not, I apologize again for that.
Yep.
We tried to make it easy and I botched it.
So I'd just like to say that I'm pretty pleased with the changes that were recommended by MDE for a change. They were actually in favor of the development community. So I'm gonna go through them one by one, and it's not a whole lot. First of all, the grading unit is no longer 20 acres or less. It's just a grading permit issued for phasing of the project. There's no grading unit, so you're not limited to 20 acres as a grading unit anymore. So you can do 30 acres as long as you're treating with sediment control requirements. So
It's just over 5,000 square feet.
it's still over 5,000. That's not changing, or has not changed, I should say. But the grading unit itself, there's no longer what is called a grading unit, and therefore that was struck from the code or the chapter. Once again, as Martin mentioned, the name of the farm plan that's being used is a soil conservation water quality plan, not a total farm resource management system plan, so that's been changed. The other change that was made was the requirement for the plan, the soil conservation sediment control plan, to be approved. Now it is every 2 years you have to go back to soil conservation and get a approval from them saying that they're still okay with the plan the way it is. That's been changed to every 3 years. So there's a 3-year time period that the plan is good for, and that change was made. And then the other change that was made was the inspection, as far as how often we need to inspect our active grading permits, or our grading permits per se. So this was this was a plus for us. The requirement used to be every 2 weeks we had to visit each of the sites, no matter if it was under construction or if it was a site just sitting with sediment controls and not being built on, which sometimes got taxing for the inspectors to get out there as quickly as 2 weeks with the workload. So that went away, and they're just leaving it up to the inspector to make sure the sediment control plan is implemented in the field. So we no longer have to meet that 2-week deadline. However, staff is continuing to attempt to do 2 weeks, because I think that's the best mechanism to make sure the sites are in good compliance with sediment control. So that change was made. And then the only other change is what we discussed here today about the penalty section, and we will once again look at the changes that were recommended for the stormwater code to incorporate them in this as well, and send you an email with that language in there.
Any questions?
No, I'm good with this one, because with if you're gonna incorporate that language that we did in the other one, I'm good with this too.
Yeah,
So,
same language.
yeah, same language. Okay, I'm good with it.
Same motion.
Yeah.
Subject to the language that Commissioner Frazier
Yep.
has suggested.
Yep, understood.
Is that your motion? I'll second it.
Set it to public hearing,
Right.
subject to
Right.
the same corrections
Yes.
that the prior, section 153, was it? 151 was,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
subject to.
I'll
special
second,
permit.
okay. Motion and second. Any further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Commissioners,
much.
very much.
Now we move on to,
They all got up and left.
I know.
Thank you.
Can you blame them?
Yep.
Can't blame them.
Standard stuff.
Funding to alleviate water problems? I'm guessing it's problems. Problems at the Carroll County Farm Museum, and request for the transfer of funds to accommodate this request. We have Jack Lyburn, Joanne Wendt, Ralph Robinson, Ted Zelensky. Ted's here? I don't see Ted.
Who are you again? Library? Is that what it is?
I missed my Hayrod.
I'll try to knock the kid out of the way so I can get on with it.
He was busy out.
Commissioners, we sent you the briefing paper, but we want one change, major change to it. We have the drawing here, and CLSI, Martin Rickles, we engineered it completely, and we're not asking for $150,000, we're asking for $110,000, and that's assuming that someone from the county be the project manager on the project. So before our chairman of our board is, Ralph. Ralph's going to kind of explain the project to you. If there's any technical questions, we have Martin Rickles. So, Ralph.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I appreciate your attention to this item. I'm the chair of the Carroll County Farm Museum Advisory Board, and we're very proud of our farm museum. One of the problems out there is that we have to continually assess what needs to be done out there to make sure that it's a wholesome and healthy place for the public, a place that they can come out and enjoy. And so the contingencies that we look at a lot are what needs to be done on a timely basis to keep the Carroll County Farm Museum viable and safe for the public. And one of the issues that we have come across, of course, is the drainage issues that occur out there and the stormwater issues that are associated with it. The Farm Museum lays in a very unique place, and a lot of water runs through it and to it. The advisory board was commissioned to do a study of some things that needed to be done on a regular basis, on a long-term basis, and some of the things that need to be done in the future. With this item in particular, we have to do some work that has to be done when the Farm Museum is not busy. So we're here to ask for this money, contingency money, to finish this project because it leads into other projects that we may want to do in the future. And this deals with the area that is part of the playground area for the children and the animal area that is right in the middle of the Farm Museum. For many years there's been a problem as far as the drainage area, and this year just exacerbated that problem in the worst way. We have some buildings there that are part of the animal exhibits that are in bad shape, that need to be replaced. We need the playground area is not up to standards as far as the ADA requirements, and it sits on a slant. There's equipment there that's really in bad shape. But before we can address any of those things, we need to address the drainage problem. So we have contacted Carroll Land Service to do a study. They made some recommendations, and we'd very much like the Water Resource Department to be involved in this project also. That's really one of our requests too in this. And we're asking for $110,000 to get this project underway and get the drainage area put together so that when we're finished, we're going to have something that'll work in the future for a long time. This has been an ongoing problem for actually decades, and it's time we fixed it. So we're here, just to give you a capsule, there's probably over 30,000 people that visit the Farm Museum every year. We have 67 annual events, 44 field trips for children, 32 weddings, 23 art classes, 9 themed teas, 5 youth camps. We've hosted Smithsonian exhibits. We have the famous wine festival every year. The food truck event has been more than overwhelmingly successful. Our fall harvest day. So we need to get these projects done when the public's not there. So if we can get started on this, the main ingredient here is money. Yeah. So we're asking today for $110,000 from contingency fund, hoping that we can get this project going and get it finished so that the public will be better off.
And next year, to a sidebar to this, we're going to put in our CEIP project for the playground and for the the cages.
We will be leveling the playground. We will be making it ADA compliant. We'll be moving the areas where the animal, I call it a petting zoo, but we call it an animal area where many, many children and adults go. I was just out there this past weekend supervising the hay rides, and we had line after line after line there. And while the kids are waiting in line, they're down there playing on that playground. Believe me, it really gets utilized. And they enjoy the animal exhibit areas. It's a very important part. The other part is if we can clean this area up, it's right in front of our wedding venue area. So it's sort of something that piggybacks on one thing after another and after another. So we're hoping if we can get this project started, we can get Water Resource to help us with the technical parts of it and overseeing it. That's our request for today.
So I assume the wet areas are the lower topology. Where are we going to move the water to?
Well, there's been, and I have Marty Riggleman here.
Martin Riggle's good.
From the Carroll Land Service, and if you would like him to...
Just a 60-second understanding of how you conceptually going to solve this problem. I'd just like to know what we're funding. Because, I mean, moving water out of low spots is not the easiest thing to do.
It's moving, basically, and I'm speaking as a farmer now, because believe me, I've moved a lot of water around but you're taking water where it shouldn't be and putting it where it should be. So there's a drainage area below this entire project that the water can dump into. There are storm water ponds below that.
Okay.
We just need to make it work.
So we have we do have a lower attitude area,
Look,
lower level area. Go ahead, Marty. Give us our 60-second summary.
Good afternoon.
Stormwater for dummies.
One of the things happening out there is you have the concrete pad right outside the barn area. It drains down towards the pathway now, keeps draining down onto the park and the playground area. What we propose is actually super elevating the driveway back towards the pasture, the concrete area, putting it down towards the end of the trench drain to capture it, put it into that facility that's after stormwater facility. In addition, we're looking at flattening the playground area out, putting under drains throughout it to drain the water out of it, along with the stone pit under the paving area to capture some of the flow. So in a nutshell, we're trying to retain some of the water and redirect it to the stormwater area.
Okay. And we have gravity on our side.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
In your defense, I was there Saturday. Were you on the playground?
No.
No, I walked down there anyway. And, you know, there's a lot of kids playing on that area, and I hate to say it, it's underwater.
So
muddy area, it was muddy out there anyway in many areas.
So is everything else right now.
Well, yeah, but this is one.
Not saying that negatively, but it is.
It is.
Carroll County Everglades.
Which is a perfect time to fix this, because you are looking at unusual circumstances, the amount of water, so that actually is the time when you capture all of it and you don't miss some.
How do we know that this project's costing us $110,000? And the reason I ask that is because if we do get our water resource folks involved, it might not be 110. Are there grants available?
Well, that's what we're hoping.
Continuing my question, my line.
We just did an engineer's cost estimate. It's all we've done so far. We did not look for grants or anything like that. That's what we're projecting the cost to be.
Okay, so I hesitate to throw money at something we don't know what it's going to cost yet. I always have been. So, especially if it's coming out of reserve for contingency. So, not that I'm poo-pooing this project.
I believe that we did evaluate to see if this project would qualify for some of the grants, but the work that was already done at the museum was educational stormwater management work done through the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I did talk to Debbie Standiford about it. There really aren't grants for this kind of work because, quite frankly, it's structural work to the facility that, again, has been neglected for decades. And I understand it also predates this board, but there aren't a lot of grant opportunities for this funding.
Okay, I'm not suggesting that we not do the project if we can't get grants. My question is, who says it's going to be 110? That's all that I'm asking, because, you know, I would certainly be willing to make this go forward with the intention that it's not going to be, or we'd only use what we need. You know what I'm saying here? You know where I'm going? I'm just asking who said 110, that's what it is.
Well, that was the estimate on the plans. We got 110. I have no interest in telegraphing that. I want to help them do it, but I would rather.
Yeah, I do too. I just want to make
the plans were reviewed. They have had an initial review by Water Resource Management and grading. They were signed off on. The initial review was signed off on.
Okay.
So
you know, I just want to preface.
I'm not arguing whether we should do it or not. I'm only arguing about where the money's going to come from, especially.
Commissioner, that was my first question too.
I'm sure it was.
Can we get this done for this kind of money? And I was assured that
last week,
we
asked Secretary Brinkley for a significant amount of money to start making upgrades at the Farm Museum.
Right.
Because, you know, as you said, we have at least 30,000 people come through there a year, and I find that a low number.
It's about 36,000.
Okay, well, the number going through is a lot of people, and it's, you know, it's a museum that we're responsible for.
Right.
And we are going to have to upgrade buildings, and there's a lot of areas, and the more you have, the more you have to maintain.
Yeah, I'm
You know
hopeful
that.
we get some of that, but.
This is
yeah.
an area, in addition to that, has gotten pretty pathetic, and it is highly used by children, and I watched Saturday, the number of kids coming in, and with parents and men, they're running over there, and they're waiting for a hayride, and that type of thing. So it's, and it was well attended, by the way. I thought you had a lot of people out there.
Bless you.
Well, can't we just, going back to what Commissioner Wayne said, just authorize them to go out on competitive bid with the understanding that the county will look to reserve for contingencies to fund it once we have the bids?
Up to $110,000.
You want to say that, I don't necessarily
Peter,
want the contractors to know that.
I would like to put a cap on it.
You can put a cap.
Let's get a
on it.
bid back.
Well, yeah, that's all, I'm not trying to slow this project down, let's roll, because it needs to be done.
Yeah,
I
same
just
here.
don't want to throw money at something just to inadvertently say, okay, well, that's what it could be, but, you know.
If we put it on bid, what's the time frame? How long is this gonna take?
Were you
Put
gonna
it
go
out
com-
in bid.
Were you gonna go competitive, or were you gonna go sing?
I put out the bid for about 3 weeks. We'll get the number back. We're gonna put it out to, you know, through our purchasing department.
So that puts you in
We'll have the
January
number
doing
back, but we like to, you know, ask you to approve it. I mean, our engineer, it's gone through review through the county. Our engineer has said, you know, it's a rough cost, but he feels pretty good at, you know, $110,000.
Yeah.
And we'll put it out to bid if it's 50,000 or 60,000, of course.
Right,
But, whereas you know, if you could give us a max of 110, but we're not gonna spend money that we don't need, and then to get, you know, Ralph was saying to get, you know, county resource management department involved, and they're gonna look at it too.
Yeah.
Resource management,
Or-
keep in mind here, there is no benefit, we have no MPDS benefit for the county doing this project. We've already received the benefit from the stormwater management project.
Right, which is what Joanne said, essentially.
Right.
So we would ask for a
Exactly.
project manager through, you know,
Yeah.
Has to be facilities.
facilities has project
But
managers.
This is not something that's currently anticipated in the CIP. As they indicated, it's been a problem for a long time, so it's coming out of the normal process, so we're putting strain on already strained resources to do this.
Okay, well, it would be my intention to go ahead and make the motion to allow them to put this out to bid, to get and then, that way it does, get the competitive bid,
And bring it back,
and then bring it back to us for award.
period.
Then that doesn't slow anything up,
That's right.
without attaching a number to
I
it
agree.
right now.
I agree. Right, That it comes in at $1 million, we're gonna say no.
Well, we know that it's not, because we've got a pretty good figure.
I know, but
so-
I'm just,
Right.
we don't telegraph
But
a number
we
either,
typically
though.
don't do this
Yeah.
any differently than anything else we do, and I don't know, I wouldn't suggest that we do this, because it kind of opens up a can here that
Okay.
I'm not sure we want to go down that.
And you got 3 votes
That would be good.
going
Yeah.
into next
We could
year.
get it
Just
out,
done.
get it out
And
to
then that
bid.
doesn't do anything to delay it, let's
Right.
roll.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But I'll make the motion that we allow them to go out to bid for this project, and come back to us with the award to be approved then.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, good.
Now we'll move on to approval and adoption of minutes. We have minutes for November 1st at 10 a.m. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Everybody ready? Yep. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Let's move on to agendas.
Hey, Jen, before we start the agendas, can I ask you 2 questions? I only have 3 weeks left, so I have 2 issues that I want to discuss whether to bring in front of the board, given I only have 3 weeks left, and I want to find out what your appetite was for them. I don't want to force them on you if it's going to be a dead end. So 2 issues. They're both simple. Steve, I think you've been approached by a citizen about an orphan piece of ag remainder land out of Liberty Road. I think he's talked to you.
Yes.
And he keeps calling me. He wants to know where we are. Do I have the support?
Right, and
to make some
and I got the
changes.
voice, by the way, I apologize for that, but I did get that voicemail, yes.
Okay, and Dick, I think you're aware of it too. You know, we have some situation where someone wants to put a shop, and if it welded tractor parts, he'd be totally within his rights to build on it under the current ag zoning district. But if he wants to weld truck parts instead of tractor parts, then he's theoretically not in compliance with the zoning code. And his argument is, look, this is an orphan piece of land. It's off of a major arterial, Liberty Road. The adjacent Carroll County neighbors seem to be supportive of him. The exterior footprint will look the same as if he was working solely on ag land. And he's thinking, could we get some relief on the zoning district when we have certain conditions? We talked about this several times in the course of the Freedom Plan. Do you have any appetite, gentlemen, to have a discussion about this in the next week or two? Probably take about 45 minutes.
Why doesn't he go to BZA?
I think he can.
He can.
I think what's holding this up is land use definition.
Yeah.
That's where we're jammed up here a little bit.
And this is an odd piece.
It is an odd piece, I will give it that,
Totally
but
unique from anything else.
my problem is if we do allow this to just if we surgically remove this piece of property and allow that to go forward, it again here we are opening up another can. I've suggested to them that we're this close to the land use definitions, and I think that particular parcel will be the first of the land use if they go through.
Into zoning.
Into zoning,
Into
into
zoning.
zoning, right. So I hate to keep saying, hang on, but if we do that one, then who's to say that the next three are gonna come in and say, well, you did that?
Yeah.
So I wanna make sure that we cautiously move forward with this. I think we're getting real close, and I will get a better sense of that because Planning Commission meets on Tuesday,
This should be February or March before we get to it, right?
which we're going through the winter period anyway. So I'm trying to appease them by just saying, hold on, Rich. That's what I was attempting to do there. So I would rather do that than just remove this one and do that one and then have another line of people say, well, wait a minute.
Well,
Okay.
I understand. Even if we did it, we'd have to have very narrow boundaries for
Right.
where it applied. So
Right.
you want to wait until the
I'd
Planning
like to
Commission
just put
works.
it on hold. I don't think there's going to be any problem with it whatsoever when it does come up.
Okay.
But I do think we need to just make sure that it's not pulled out and put into normal process.
Okay, Dick, where are you at on
And
that?
this has part of a state road attached to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's at the intersection of something. Yeah, it does. It's got, yeah.
It's 100 feet back from Liberty
Right.
But
Road.
the old road is part of this.
There's old Liberty Road, and
Yeah.
there's Liberty Road,
Yeah,
it goes
I mean, that
across.
was
So again, I don't think there's going to be
It's
a
kind of a
problem.
dingleberry piece of land. It seems a shame to not put it
I
up
know,
to some kind of
but
productive use.
out of respect for the other folks that are looking for changes as well, that we're told we're on hold until we get through this part of it, I think we better just let it all
Okay.
in the
All right.
process.
Okay.
My suggestion.
Are you all in agreement with that?
Yeah. Yeah. we have
Okay.
to.
All right, second issue. Been approached by developers. Obviously, some of them were pushing for high-density development in Eldersburg, and we shot it down and rolled it back to medium density, and I think this board made the right decision, unanimously made the right decision. However, the builder did bring up something else that had to do with their ability to operate profitably we talked at the 59th board talked about this. It has to do with the timing of connection fees for water and sewer. And if I remember correctly, in Carroll County, if you want to build 100 houses, you've got to pay all of your connections at the time you post your record plat. It could be years before you build. And this developer was telling me that in many counties, the way it works, and I haven't checked this yet, is that you don't have to pay your connection fees until you pull your building permit. And he said to me, going to a bank, if you want to connect 100 houses and it's a $10,000 connection fee, $1 million, you can't even borrow money, any incremental money for that when you have nothing to offer them other than land, which may already be mortgaged. And he was saying, I really wish Carroll County, they were saying, really wish Carroll County would consider allowing us to delay payment of the connection fees until the building permit is pulled rather than when the record plat is
You
recorded.
can't build over 25 a year.
Right.
And I thought,
Well, you know,
this sounds familiar. I thought we brought this up already.
I think it was the 59th board, wasn't it, Roberta?
No, I thought
I
we-
don't think that this has been brought up to this board, at least not recently, but keep in mind, you're paying for the capacity that you're using, so, I think that requires a very in-depth conversation.
Right.
The way we have our utilities structured for the next 40 or 50 years, which we do, we plans out as to how we need, what money we need and when, would have to be considered.
Well, the developer offered a proposal on that. Your developer actually addressed that. So let me tell you what the developer said to me. The developer said, look, Rich, he says, we're not suggesting that we shouldn't have to pay the fee if there's no capacity, but we've got areas of others where we know the capacity is there. And not only is the capacity there, but we're going to have to be the ones that lay the water and sewer lines to the subdivision. So now what you're telling us, not only do we have to pay, we have to fund the water and sewer lines ourselves to access the capacity that's already there, but we also have to pay connection fees, possibly years before we even pull the permits to build there. Now, come on, Rich, it's one or the other. Telling us we have to do both seems rather unfair. So, Rich, we would be happy if the regs were modified so what it stated were in cases where we know we have the water and sewer capacity at the plants, that the builder would receive relief, especially in cases where the builder himself is going to be running the water and sewer lines to get to the property he's developing. And we don't really want to have to pay our connection fees until we pull our actual building permits. Seems like a pretty reasonable proposition to me, and it actually makes it easier for that area to develop.
I'd say, I do remember talking about this before, a couple of years ago. I do remember this coming up, and I remember our staff coming, I can't remember the reasoning, but there was a reason why we do it the way that we do it. And it was a sound reason, and I don't have any objection to staff coming in and talking to us about this again, but I do remember we've talked about this exact issue with this board.
Okay, I don't remember
You're
that.
also, one reason that you're doing it at record
Because you're
plan is you're
older.
sort of ensuring your allocation. So if you do wait till your permits are drawn, you may never be able to build
Right.
because you may not have your allocation. So we have, as I said, there are fiscal as well as other reasons that make
Yeah,
sense
I
to
believe
do
that
it the way
was
we
what
do
was
it.
brought up, yeah.
Well, maybe we're to a point where a review of the question would be
Well, that's
good
all I'm
for
asking.
us.
Do we want to have a discussion about this in the next 2 weeks or so for maybe 45 minutes with staff and see whether it merits any reconsideration? I don't know. I don't know. And Roberta's point is, we talked about that too. I don't know what the right solution is. There just seems to be a sense that we're harder on them than surrounding counties. That seemed to be the sense. They actually gave me some data.
I don't know about that.
Well,
I don't.
we also have a water system that's able to pay for itself, unlike other surrounding jurisdictions. So, you know, we're well managed with regard to our water system, unlike sisters.
So do you guys want to put it on the agenda for half an hour, 40-minute discussion or not in the next 2 weeks? I mean, I don't want to force it on you if you don't want to.
I mean, I wouldn't be against a review of it. I don't know that there needs to be any type of decision made, but maybe just to reiterate why, if you're talking about the fact that there was good sound reasoning before.
I don't remember exact, but I do remember.
But maybe just a review of that.
How about just a staff briefing on this?
That's
why we
fine.
do it this way, and then
I'm
you can
good with
determine
that.
whether after the next board to see you want to take it.
Right.
further.
Do a staff briefing. Yeah, that's fine. Just a
Staff- all right.
briefing on it
So-
will be fine. That's
all right.
fine. Just to
So
reiterate
let's
it.
put a
And
four-
again, no decision, nothing nothing
No
crazy
decision,
like
no
that.
proposals, just a brief
Just-
discussion of it, to
right.
determine whether or not it merits consideration by the next board. I promised this person I would see what I could get it to bring it in front of the public. and
That's
the
fine,
board.
just to
Okay.
review it. Yep, that's fine.
All right, thank you. So we'll
Yep.
stick that
All
in
right.
there somewhere, Denise.
Yep,
What are we
within
gonna
the
call that?
next-
We're gonna call that review of connection fee.
I'll get with
Yeah,
Roberta.
we'll get it. Okay.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Yep.
All right.
All right, move on to agendas. Monday, November 12th, county officers are closed in observance of Veterans Day. But at 9 o'clock in the morning, there's the Gerstel Academy Veterans Day ceremony in Finksburg with Commissioners Frazier, Weaver, and Howard. On Tuesday, November 13th, at 8:30 a.m., Circle of Caring Committee meeting at Westminster, Commissioner Frazier. At 9 o'clock, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, County Office Building, Commissioner Wance. At 3 o'clock, Smoothie King grand opening ribbon cutting in Eldersburg with Commissioner Howard. Wish he was here so I could make a comment about that.
Oh,
but
I'm sure they will.
He's not here, so I can't comment it.
Oh, I could.
At 7 o'clock, the Ag Center Board meeting in Westminster with Commissioner Frazier. What? No. I know, I was kidding. It's 7 o'clock. Also, is the Boy Scout Weeblo Den meeting in Westminster with Commissioner Howard. Wednesday, November 14th, 9:30 a.m., Carroll County Fire Museum Advisory Board meeting in Westminster, Commissioner Weaver. At 11 o'clock, a newly built Fair Lawn Tool Open House in Westminster. Commissioners Wance and Weaver can put me down from there. I will see, because I think it goes till 5 or something like that. I'll see if I can slip in between school and
Yeah, that's
It's an open house, not a
Yeah,
ribbon.
it's an
yeah,
all-day open
you're
house
right. So
with
I think I'm
no
just
ribbons.
Put my name down on there. 5 o'clock, Board of Education meeting. Westminster, Commissioner Weaver. At 6 o'clock, Carroll Community College Board meeting. Westminster, Commissioner Wance. On Thursday, November 15th, we have a public hearing and zoning tax amendment reducing required BZA newspaper advertisements from Board of Zoning hearings from 2 to 1. We have a briefing about comprehensive rezoning on commercial industrial employment tax and procedure. We're going to have a briefing on Mount Area Annexation number 42, Dorseytown. And at 11:30, we have the ARC of Carroll County Tech Coaching Center launch in Westminster, Maryland. Commissioner Wance and Howard, you put my name down for that. At 1:30, we have a bid approval for removal and replacement of 2 AC units at the historic courthouse. We have a bid approval for renovation project, soundproof, the Office of Human Resources. Something funny came to mind, that's all. Have request approval to submit applications for FY18 Family Self-Sufficiency Program. We have request approval to submit application for Medicare improvements for patients and providers. And we have a Miller quarterly report. And in the afternoon, we also have topics by Commissioner Howard.
And what will that be? Do you know?
I don't know, it's scheduled for 1 hour.
So,
I think we should cut him down to like 20 minutes.
I would like either, the following week, there won't be any session. And will there be a session right before the new board is
The
installed?
29th, there are 2 more after this, the 15th and the 29th.
2 more.
Because
These
I would
two
like,
agendas are
I would like
listed.
about 20 minutes to discuss some topics and challenges for the next board, my perspective before I depart.
Well,
20
maybe.
It could either be the 15th or it could be,
Okay, so why don't you do it on the 15th if you're both going to do
Knock
it that
it
day?
out.
I don't know what topics by Howard
Right.
needs. That's
hours a lot of time.
Yeah, that's so, but I would certainly welcome that, and I will also just share that I won't be here on the 29th. I'll be with the Baltimore Metro Council at another event. So that'll be, this 15th's my last open session with all
So-
5 of us.
So put me down for 20 minutes.
Thank you, Phil. You're welcome.
Maybe it'll put me before Howard, because there'll all be alerts still.
Well,
He's already on the
these
agenda,
are
so.
actually, it's about the vet shuttle and about an update from the Miller Center on the numbers that have come in the
Okay.
first quarter. So
All right,
they're
so
not
mine's gonna be more or
retrospective.
less some departing observations or recommendations or whatever.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do it that day.
All right.
Because
20 minutes.
I'd like to hear that, and since I'm not going to be here on the 29th, I
Thank you.
respectfully ask that we do it that day.
Okay. All right, at 4:30, Carroll Promise Scholarship Reception at Carroll Community College in Westminster, Commissioner Wance. On Saturday, November 17th, Sioux City, USS Sioux City Commission in Annapolis, Commissioner Howard at 9 a.m. And the Commissioner's report is Commissioner Wance that week.
Yeah, so that's kind of messed up too. I switched with Doug. I'm yielding my TTR time to allow for, I think, for Rich, unless you've already said goodbye on TTR to the thousands of people
Yeah, I
that listen
have.
at 7:05
Yeah,
a.m.
I'm good.
You're good?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. So that, I don't know who that's going to be, but I'm doing it actually this week, which is Howard's turn. So maybe he'll do next week or this week.
Okay.
Whatever. Okay.
I'm saying goodbye,
Just-
and my opponents are saying good riddance.
So there's that.
Okay. Monday, November 19th, nothing scheduled. Tuesday, November 20th, we're going to have a solar ribbon cutting at Hoods Mill landfill at 1 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, we need to put us, who's going to go to that?
I'll
Because
never make,
I'll be there.
I'll never make those. Woods Mill.
No, you're not gonna be
ribbon
able to get
cutting
the
and
Woods
back
Mill
it,
to
it just
do
won't
the
work.
vets. You're not, you'll never do
Oh,
that.
that's right, you gotta
Just
get,
won't make it.
okay.
Won't work.
You can list me, I'll try to get down to Woods Mill.
If the sun's not that important to you, don't worry about
Don't wanna get a rash.
You do, it's below 26.
Okay.
2 o'clock, Veterans Advisory Meeting, VFW Post 467 with Commissioner Weaver in Westminster. It's 6:15 at speaking engagement at Westminster Kiwanis Club in Westminster, Commissioner Frazier. We will be closed Thursday, November 22nd for Thanksgiving. And Friday, November 23rd. I just saw that. And the Commissioner's report, it would be Commissioner Weaver that week.
Appropriate, it's turkey.
The turkey report.
Right.
We have anything else? We're going to recess. Am I right? Recessing until 2 o'clock?
Yes, I do. One really quick thing. Just came to our attention that in chapter 156, which is your adequate public facilities ordinance, there's a typographical error. And it's been promulgated all the way through, from the very first resolution that started the ordinance all the way through. The way it should read, it's related to school state-rated capacity. Remember what your adequate public facilities ordinance does is say if something is inadequate, then you various things are balanced. Whether it's or assessed, whether it's emergency services, school, water, etc. Right. So the inadequacy, it says here, for all level schools, middle school, elementary, and high, if they're over 120%, the student population is over 120% of the capacity of the school, then it's considered inadequate. The typo is that when it gets to high school, instead of saying 120%, it says 20%. So just, you guys okay with us going to public hearing to change the 20 to 120 where it should be?
The Board of Education might have deliberately wanted it.
I figure we need to change it immediately before they know it.
How did I know that you were going to say that?
You know it.
Yeah, I just
knew
knew it.
I know
So it was just a typographical error that all these years, I mean, this has been this way, we looked back, it's been this way. I don't know, I think the ordinance was originally passed in the 90s.
I think some of the Board of Education members have informed me that it'd be okay to change it back to 120 as long as there's also a requirement for granite countertops.
There you go. Fancy entrances.
No, I don't have, you need a.
Yeah, just give me a motion to go to public hearing to
Correct the typo.
make that typographical
I'll
error.
move that we approve going to public hearing to correct chapter 56 adequate public facilities, to correct the typo. We're in, with respect to the adequacy of high schools, that we correct the 20% so it reads that they are inadequate when they hit 120%.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
That's my motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Then we reopen North Carroll due to the 20%.
Actually, do we need a public hearing for that? I don't, we don't,
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
You check with Tim
Can't
on a typo?
get around that, huh?
Do we need a
If it had just been a typo, as I said, it's been all the way through, the whole, from the resolution when it was first passed, no one caught it. I don't know why. So it's not just, if we're just in the ordinance.
Well, we should be able to get the money for Manchester then, because we were inadequate.
There you go.
There you go.
Wow.
Let's try to get
I
that.
wish.
Let's go back.
yeah.
Send them the bill plus 8% interest.
All right, I'm going to make a motion, we recess till 2 when we were having our transportation tour.
Is it 2 or 3?
2.
Down in the Reagan room.
The tour that goes nowhere.
The tour that goes nowhere.
Second
A
it.
static tour.
All those in favor? Aye.
And then I'll make
Recessed until
2.
2.
Do we need a motion to adjourn
We'll
after
do,
that?
we'll do that down there, won't we?
I think you do it down there,
Yeah.
generally.
Okay.